Hey everyone, tonight we're covering the what if ancient cities still slept beneath the ocean? There are indeed entire civilizations resting silently on ocean floors around the world. Not the mythical Atlantis of Plato's stories, but real places where real people once walked, laughed, traded, and lived their daily lives. These sunken cities hold secrets that could reshape how we understand human history, and tonight we're going to dive deep into their mysterious world. Before we commence further in together, if you're enjoying this underwater journey through time, I hope you'll consider subscribing to hear more stories like this one. There's something deeply satisfying about discovering that our world still holds such profound mysteries, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal themselves. Also, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, take a moment to close your eyes and visualize yourself floating gently on a calm evening over the Mediterranean Sea. As you look down through the depths, you start to notice something remarkable in the glistening clear water below. With their surfaces covered in centuries worth of coral and marine growth, stone columns rise from the seafloor like sleeping giants. You realize you're looking down at a whole city, perfectly preserved under the waves. As streets lined with old marble stretch into the blue-green distance. This isn't merely fantasy. Less than 5% of our planet's surface has been explored, despite the ocean covering more than 70% of it as you read these words. This implies that there are enormous underwater regions that we don't know anything about, like far-off planets, the ruins of coastal cities that flourished thousands of years ago before being seized by rising seas, are hidden deep within these hidden depths. Now, let's set out on our adventure in the warm waters off the coast of Egypt, where the secrets of one of the most amazing underwater discoveries in recent memory are still being revealed. At one time, Thonis Heracleion was a thriving port city at the mouth of the Nile Delta. It was Egypt's main entry point to the Mediterranean for more than a millennium. Its harbours would receive ships from all over the known world, loaded with exotic goods, spices and gold. In its opulent temples, priests performed holy rites, and traders bargained in marketplaces where a dozen languages were spoken. However, Thonis Heracleion was even more unique because of a secret. Before the Trojan War started, it was said that the well-known Helen of Troy sought safety here with her lover Paris. In his awe-inspiring account of this city, the ancient Greek historian Herodotus said that Egyptian gods guarded foreign sailors there, and that cultures coexisted there like hues on an artist's palette. The Mediterranean then started to recover what it had given at some point in the 8th century. Buildings, harbours, and a whole way of life were all lost as the city gradually sank beneath the waves. Thonis Heracleion was reduced to a legend found in ancient texts for more than a millennium, which some academics dismissed as pure mythology. When French marine archaeologist Frank Goddio and his team made a discovery in 2000 that would change the course of history, that changed. They found enormous structures 30 feet below the surface of Abukir Bay using advanced sonar equipment. They were blown away by what they discovered. The city's streets and structures were remarkably well preserved by the mild embrace of Mediterranean waters, and it covered several square miles of seafloor. Huge statues of gods and pharaohs were lying broken but undamaged, the delicate smiles carved by ancient artists still visible on their granite faces. The crew found the remains of more than 60 ships, their wooden hulls shielded by centuries' worth of silt buildup. Most astonishingly, though, they discovered commonplace items that vividly depicted the ancient city in ways that textbooks could never. Coins found on the seafloor revealed tales of transcontinental trade routes, delicate gold ornaments that were once worn by the wives of wealthy merchants on their wrists, and necks were still found in jewellery boxes. Multiple language inscriptions found on clay tablets demonstrated a genuinely cosmopolitan society in which Greek, Phoenician, and Egyptian cultures freely coexisted. Divers started to piece together a picture of daily life in this lost world as they meticulously unearthed these treasures. The city was thoughtfully designed, with broad boulevards linking temple complexes and residential areas. The biggest ships of antiquity could be accommodated by sophisticated harbour installations. While complex drainage systems kept the streets dry during seasonal floods, underground channels transported fresh water from the Nile to every neighbourhood. Archaeologists could examine building methods that had been lost to time because the preservation beneath the waves had been so thorough. They learned that Thonis Heraclean's builders had been skilled engineers who had built foundations that would endure the region's sporadic earthquakes as well as the powerful floods of the Nile. More than 1,000 years later, during the Renaissance, the city's temples used architectural innovations that would not be seen again. Let's now cross the Mediterranean to another amazing underwater city, this one off the coast of Turkey. With its red-tiled roofs mirrored in the Mediterranean's azure waters, the ancient Greek city of Smyrna once stood majestically on the Lycian coast. Visitors can now snorkel straight over the underwater ruins at the contemporary Turkish resort of Kalaköy, looking down at the windows and doorways that once framed the everyday dramas of ancient life. Smyrna's gradual surrender to the sea is what makes it so intriguing. Smyrna's submersion occurred gradually over several centuries, in contrast to cities devastated by abrupt disasters. The locals merely relocated their residences and places of business to higher ground as the coastline changed and sea levels rose. As a result, an archaeological snapshot of an ancient city gradually bidding farewell to the land has been preserved. It feels like a dream to swim above Smyrna today. Fish now use the doorways between rooms as highways, and stone staircases lead down into the blue depths. Though they now house schools of vibrant Mediterranean fish instead of wooden sailing vessels, the ancient harbour walls remain sturdy. With its ornate Lycian tombs standing sentinel over their submerged city, the city's necropolis, carved into the rocky coastline, is still partially above water. It was unthinkable for the residents of Smyrna 2,000 years ago that tourists would one day swim through their streets while donning masks and fins. However, in certain respects, the sea has been the ideal steward of their heritage. Organic materials that would have long since decomposed on land have been preserved in the deeper waters due to the consistent temperature and oxygen deprivation. Textiles, leather goods, and even wooden beams have all survived in remarkably good condition. Our presumptions about ancient coastal life have been called into question by the discoveries made by archaeologists at Smyrna. By building underwater foundations and breakwaters that show a thorough awareness of ocean currents and wave patterns, they have discovered proof that the city's residents were highly skilled marine engineers. Knowing that their city would eventually have to face the rising sea, these ancient builders prepared with engineering solutions that contemporary coastal cities are only now starting to recognize. Off the coast of Italy, close to Naples, we come across the sunken city of Baia as we continue to explore the Mediterranean's hidden past. Previously referred to as the Roman Empire's Las Vegas, Baia served as a haven for the wealthy and influential to indulge their most extravagant fantasies. Even the notoriously indulgent Romans were scandalized by the city's reputation for decadence, its natural hot springs, and its opulent villas that dwarfed contemporary resorts. Julius Caesar, Emperor Nero, and numerous senators and patricians all kept palaces here, with heated pools, steam rooms, and intricate mosaics that portrayed scenes from everyday life and mythology. The city's thermal baths were architectural wonders. Along the coastline were private villas that competed with one another in terms of luxury and extravagance. However, Baia would ultimately fail due to its location on the volcanic Phlegraean fields, which are the same geological forces that produced its well-liked hot springs. The city gradually sank below sea level due to gradual volcanic subsidence, and by the 4th century, the majority of Baia had disappeared beneath the Bay of Naples waves. One of the most bizarre diving experiences in the world can now be found at the underwater archaeological park of Baia. The mosaic floors of former imperial palaces, which have remained intact for 16 centuries, are open for visitors to swim through. Where Roman senators once discussed matters of state, fish swim through doorways. In underwater gardens where exotic plants from all over the empire once bloomed, statues of gods and emperors stand. The exceptional preservation at Baia can be attributed in part to the water's distinct chemistry. The city structures have been preserved thanks to the minerals released by the same volcanic activity that sank it. As a result, the intricate details of Roman artistic achievement, from delicate frescoes to intricate sculptural decorations, can still be seen in this underwater museum. The most striking thing about these ruins for contemporary visitors is how human they feel. Baia preserves the private areas where people actually lived, in contrast to the monuments and temples that are usually left over from the ancient world. You can swim through gardens where lovers met in secret, past bedrooms where children were born and raised, and through private dining rooms where Roman families ate their evening meals. A child's toy boat, still positioned on what was once a terrace with a view of the bay, was one of the most poignant finds at Baia. The anaerobic conditions had preserved the wooden toy perfectly, and archaeologists could still see the small painted figures of sailors that had been meticulously placed on its deck by some Roman child. It is impossible to view such artifacts without picturing the actual inhabitants of this underwater city. The fact that many of these submerged cities were destroyed by slow changes that their residents endured and adapted to rather than by abrupt calamities makes the tale even more fascinating. According to recent studies, coastal peoples have historically developed creative solutions to deal with the rising seas, demonstrating remarkable resilience that contemporary cities are only now starting to comprehend. Ancient peoples created highly advanced early warning systems for sea level changes, according to archaeological evidence from sites throughout the Mediterranean. In order to adapt to changing coastlines, they created adaptable urban plans. They developed construction methods that would allow for partial flooding without compromising livability. Compared to many contemporary coastal communities, these ancient cities were more equipped to withstand the effects of sea level rise. Tonight, from where in the world are you listening? I occasionally ponder whether the spot where you're unwinding now could eventually serve as an archaeological site for scuba divers in the future. It serves as a sobering reminder of how fleeting human settlements are in the vast scheme of geological time. Now, let's venture outside of the Mediterranean to investigate underwater cities in other regions of the world. Sonar surveys have found what may be the remnants of a huge ancient city that covered almost 5 square miles of ocean floor in the Gulf of Cambay off the coast of India. One of the oldest urban settlements ever found. The site may be over 9,000 years old, according to carbon dating of artifacts found there. Such a discovery would have revolutionary ramifications. Historians would have to re-evaluate the chronology of human urban development if the Gulf of Cambay site were verified, as it would be several thousand years older than the oldest cities in Mesopotamia. The pottery tools and architectural fragments that have been found thus far point to a highly developed civilization that was able to plan and build extensive urban areas. The location of the Gulf of Cambay discovery is what makes it so fascinating. During the last ice age, when sea levels were significantly lower than they are now, the location would have been coastal plains. Rising waters would have gradually flooded this ancient landscape as the great ice sheets melted at the end of the Pleistocene epoch, preserving any human settlements that may have existed there. Compared to the Mediterranean, the preservation conditions in the Gulf of Cambay are very different. In addition to posing special archaeological challenges, the warmer waters and altered sediment composition have also unexpectedly preserved materials. Here, organic materials that would have long since broken down in other settings have persisted, providing fascinating insights into the everyday activities of those who lived in an era when a large portion of the planet was still covered in ice. Similar findings have been made off the coast of Japan, where structures discovered by underwater archaeological surveys are thought by some researchers to be the remnants of ancient settlements. Massive stone formations that seem to have been altered by humans make up the Yonaguni Monument, which was found off the coast of Yonaguni Island in the 1980s. These structures show how much we still don't know about our underwater heritage, even though there is ongoing discussion about whether they are man-made or natural geological formations. A particularly intriguing aspect of how ancient peoples might have adjusted to shifting sea levels has been uncovered by the Japanese discoveries. Some communities seem to have adopted amphibious lifestyles, building structures that could operate both above and below the waterline, rather than merely leaving their coastal settlements behind as the waters rose. These adaptations point to a highly developed knowledge of marine environments that we are only now starting to recognize. We start to realize that the history of human civilization is much more complicated than we first thought as we investigate these underwater cities. Despite its impressiveness, the land-based archaeological record only covers a small portion of human history. Whole chapters of our story are still hidden beneath the waves, awaiting the necessary tools and methods to properly read them. Underwater archaeology today is very different from the treasure hunts of the past. A few decades ago, the array of advanced tools used by marine archaeologists today would have seemed like science fiction. Structures hidden beneath centuries of sediment are revealed by side-scan sonar, which produces detailed maps of underwater terrain. With cameras and sampling tools that offer previously unheard-of detail about underwater locations, remotely operated vehicles can explore depths that would be hazardous or impossible for human divers. The ability to study these sites without removing artifacts from their aquatic environment is perhaps the most remarkable development in underwater excavation techniques. Archaeologists can preserve the chemical conditions that have preserved artifacts for centuries by cleaning, analyzing, and recording them in underwater laboratories. Underwater archaeology presents enormous challenges. Specialized training, costly equipment, and close adherence to safety procedures are necessary when working below the surface. Storms, currents, and visibility conditions can all have an impact on excavation work, and the underwater environment can change quickly. Each dive is meticulously organized and constrained by variables such as daylight availability, water temperature, and depth. However, these difficulties have sparked advancements that are advantageous to archaeology overall. Preservation techniques for artifacts found on land have been enhanced by techniques developed for underwater excavation. Archaeologists now record and share their findings in a completely new way thanks to digital mapping and documentation techniques that were first used in marine environments. Underwater archaeology's interdisciplinary nature has brought together specialists from a wide range of disciplines, including computer science, engineering, geology, and marine biology. The application of artificial intelligence to the analysis of underwater archaeological data has been one of the most exciting developments in recent years. Potential archaeological sites can be found across large swathes of the ocean floor with the aid of machine learning algorithms, which can spot patterns in sonar data that the human eye might overlook. In order to identify and catalogue artifacts, AI systems can also analyze underwater photos. This helps archaeologists concentrate their efforts on the most promising finds and expedites the documentation process. Underwater archaeological sites are far more common than previously thought, according to these technological advancements. The puzzle of human coastal history is completed each year by the discovery of new submerged settlements, harbours, and individual structures. Many of these sites require sophisticated robotic systems to access because they're situated in regions that are now too deep for conventional diving. Researchers are still in awe of the preservation of organic materials in submerged environments. Remains of wood, leather, textiles, and even food can endure for millennia in the frigid, oxygen-poor conditions of deeper waters. Since organic materials usually decompose in decades or centuries, these materials offer insights into ancient daily life that are rarely available from land-based archaeological sites. Ancient ship cargoes with their contents intact have been found recently, offering in-depth glimpses into historical trade networks. Because amphorae containing grain, wine, and olive oil have been discovered with their original contents intact, scientists can now examine ancient agricultural and culinary practices in previously unheard-of detail. Direct communication from people who lived thousands of years ago is possible thanks to the survival of wooden writing tablets with readable inscriptions. The personal belongings that have survived underwater, jewelry, toys, tools, and household items that relate to the common human experiences of play, work, love, and everyday survival, may be the most poignant. These relics serve as a reminder that the inhabitants of these now demolished cities were not all that dissimilar from us. They enjoyed small pleasures, took pride in their work, and worried about their families. We come across evidence of how ancient peoples perceived and engaged with marine environments as we continue to explore these underwater worlds. Cities along the coast were not merely constructed next to the sea, they were closely related to it. Advanced understanding of tides, currents, and seasonal weather patterns can be seen in harbour installations. The ability of ancient engineers to construct structures that could withstand storm surges and wave action is demonstrated by underwater foundations. Numerous ancient coastal peoples engaged in aquaculture, managing marine resources using methods that contemporary environmental scientists are rediscovering, according to archaeological evidence. Shellfish beds, fish pens, and artificial reefs demonstrate that these communities considered themselves to be stewards of marine ecosystems rather than merely consumers of coastal resources. In these ancient cities, the land-sea relationship was dynamic and fluid. Above and below the waterline, many settlements had buildings that performed several purposes. During storms, harbours served as flood control systems. Seasonal variations in water levels were taken into consideration when designing waterfront structures. In times of flood or high tide, streets and plazas could serve as canals. For contemporary coastal communities dealing with rising sea levels and intensifying storms, this adaptability offers important lessons. Successful coastal cities had to cooperate with natural systems rather than fight them, as ancient urban planners recognized. They created communities that were flexible enough to adapt to change without losing their core capabilities. Living in these amphibious cities had significant social repercussions. This dual relationship was reflected in the distinctive cultures of communities that relied on both land and the sea. Religious rituals combined elements of the land and the sea. Both fields served as inspiration for art and architecture. The ongoing interaction between land and water that characterized day-to-day existence was reflected even in language and poetry. These coastal peoples may have developed extraordinarily advanced knowledge of oceanography and marine biology, according to archaeological evidence. They were able to navigate using stars and currents, forecast weather patterns, and spot minor changes in marine ecosystems that pointed to more significant environmental changes. Through religious ceremonies, practical customs, and oral traditions, this knowledge was transmitted from one generation to the next. Coastal peoples were carrying out complex scientific observations thousands of years ago, as evidenced by the discovery of ancient astronomical instruments and tide prediction devices at underwater locations. They were creating mathematical models to forecast marine conditions, mapping tidal cycles, and monitoring seasonal variations. They were engaging in early oceanography and marine science practices in many respects. We discover evidence of vast trade networks that linked far-flung coastal communities as we dig deeper into these underwater archives. Underwater site artifacts demonstrate that people, products, and ideas traveled across entire ocean basins on intricate maritime routes. While uniting communities over great distances through a common maritime culture, these historic trade networks served as the cornerstone of the first genuinely global economy. The ships themselves, which have been conserved in underwater archaeological sites, provide amazing insights into the technology of ancient seafaring. Thousands of years ago, shipwrights created advanced methods for creating ships that could survive lengthy ocean journeys. They had a unique understanding of cargo management, sail configuration, and hull design that would not be fully recognized until the age of exploration. Ancient ships were frequently far bigger and more advanced than previously thought, according to recent discoveries. Across thousands of miles of open ocean, some of the ships discovered in underwater archaeological sites could transport hundreds of tons of cargo. These were advanced ocean-going ships built for deep water travel, not rudimentary boats that clung to coastlines. These ancient ships' navigational aids reveal a remarkable level of astronomical and mathematical knowledge. Ancient mariners were able to use star sightings and mathematical calculations to determine their position, as demonstrated by celestial navigation devices. Early knowledge of magnetic navigation is revealed by devices that resemble compass needles. Wooden or metal-carved charts and maps demonstrate a thorough understanding of the hazards, currents, and coastal features. Most intriguingly, there is evidence of early forms of marine archaeology at some underwater archaeological sites. Underwater structures and artifacts pique the interest of ancient peoples who occasionally purposefully salvaged materials from older submerged sites. This points to a historical awareness that valued conserving and researching the artifacts of past societies. The intriguing tale of these underwater cities is further complicated by their religious and spiritual significance. Many ancient cultures thought that even after cities vanished under the waves, they still had spiritual significance. Pilgrims continued to visit sacred sites, diving or sailing over them to offer sacrifices and ask for divine favor. Some underwater sites continued to receive ritual attention for centuries after they were submerged, according to archaeological evidence. Even though these locations could no longer be reached on foot, votive offerings have been discovered strewn throughout submerged temples and sacred areas, suggesting that people still regarded these locations as spiritually active. Accurate historical and geographical details about actual locations that had been lost to the sea were frequently preserved in the mythology surrounding sunken cities. It is now acknowledged that stories that were written off as pure fiction by previous academics can provide important hints about the locations and features of real archaeological sites. It turns out that historical memory can be remarkably effectively preserved over millennia through folklore and legend. Because of this recognition, archaeologists are now more attentive to local legends and traditional stories when looking for underwater sites. Oral histories from indigenous communities frequently contain comprehensive details about submerged landmarks and coastal changes. For contemporary archaeological research, these traditional knowledge systems offer priceless direction. One of the most beneficial trends in modern underwater archaeology is the cooperative relationship between traditional knowledge keepers and archaeologists. In-depth knowledge of underwater landscapes that are invisible to outside researchers is frequently possessed by communities that have preserved ties to ancestral coastal territories. Archaeological research has become more efficient and respectful as a result of this partnership approach. As our technology develops, we are learning that there is a lot more human history on the ocean floors than anyone had previously thought. Every new excavation reveals artifacts that deepen our understanding of ancient coastal life, and every new survey identifies new sites. Investigating these underwater archives is essentially rewriting the history of humanity. The ramifications go well beyond history and archaeology. Addressing contemporary climate challenges requires an understanding of how ancient coastal communities adjusted to environmental change. Time-tested solutions are provided by traditional building methods urban planning approaches, and resource management systems which contemporary communities can enhance and modify. Unprecedented opportunities for scientific analysis are being created by the preservation of organic materials in underwater locations. New details about ancient populations' health, diets, and migrations are being revealed by ancient DNA recovered from underwater archaeological contexts. Underwater environmental samples offer comprehensive documentation of past ocean chemistry, ecosystem shifts, and climate conditions. Ancient coastal environments and their historical changes are being depicted in ever more detailed detail by these scientific analyses. Today, we can trace the development of marine ecosystems, reconstruct historical weather patterns, and comprehend the effects of human activity on coastal environments from thousands of years ago. Important baseline information for comprehending contemporary environmental changes is provided by this environmental archaeology. Deep historical roots of environmental consciousness are also being revealed by the study of underwater cities. In order to manage marine resources sustainably, ancient coastal peoples created complex systems. They comprehended ideas that contemporary environmental science is rediscovering and improving, such as carrying capacity, seasonal constraints, and ecosystem management. According to archaeological evidence, prosperous ancient coastal communities followed what are now considered to be the earliest examples of ecosystem-based management. They created social institutions that could impose conservation measures over whole regions, rotated harvesting areas to allow for recovery, and preserved reserves of important species. Spiritual and cultural elements that supported sustainable practices were frequently included in these antiquated conservation systems. Seasons when certain species should not be harvested were designated by religious ceremonies. Important habitats were shielded by cultural taboos. Social hierarchies made sure that people who had a long-term interest in the survival of the community made decisions about resource management. Sobering lessons about the vulnerability of sustainable resource use are provided by the disintegration of these traditional management systems, which frequently resulted from outside forces or environmental changes. Archaeological sequences demonstrate how, when their established systems were upset, communities that had been effectively managing marine resources for centuries could disintegrate in a single generation. However, the same archaeological record also shows how adaptable and resilient humans can be. Communities frequently relocated and rebuilt their civilizations elsewhere after losing their original coastal territories to rising seas. While adjusting to new surroundings, they preserved their cultural identities. They developed fresh approaches to altered situations while maintaining fundamental knowledge and procedures. For contemporary coastal communities dealing with comparable difficulties, this resiliency offers hope. Humans have successfully adapted to significant environmental changes numerous times throughout history, according to the archaeological record. As we confront the coastal challenges of the 21st century, we can draw from vast reservoirs of knowledge and experience. It's important to consider the implications of these discoveries for our comprehension of human civilization as we draw to a close our exploration of these underwater cities. It is obvious that the conventional view of human progress as a gradual transition from prehistoric to advanced societies needs to be revised. Advanced civilizations with knowledge and skills we're only now starting to comprehend are revealed by the underwater archaeological record. These ancient cities were more than just forerunners of contemporary communities. They stand for different ways of living in cities that have been especially tailored to coastal and marine settings. Their approaches to resource management, storm protection, and sea level change were frequently more advanced and long-lasting than those taken by contemporary cities. Ancient peoples were far more skilled engineers and scientists than previously thought, as evidenced by the technological advancements found at underwater archaeological sites. They created construction methods, navigational aids, and environmental control systems that are competitive with their contemporary counterparts. Their solutions were sometimes better than the ones being used now. Most significantly, these underwater cities serve as a reminder of the transience of human settlements and the importance of long-term planning in urban design. The same environmental issues that destroyed these ancient settlements will eventually affect every city we construct today. The archaeological record offers examples of effective adaptation techniques, as well as cautions about the negative effects of inadequate adaptation. New facets of these extinct civilizations are constantly being discovered through the continuous investigation of underwater archaeological sites. Every diving season yields new findings that deepen our knowledge of prehistoric coastal life. 10 years ago, it would have been impossible to study these sites in the ways that are now possible thanks to advanced technology, and future developments will surely uncover even more about these underwater worlds. Due to the collaborative nature of contemporary underwater archaeology, these findings gain from a variety of viewpoints and levels of experience. Understanding the impact of underwater environments on archaeological preservation is aided by marine biologists. Engineers provide insights into both contemporary excavation techniques and traditional building methods. New tools for evaluating and disseminating archaeological data are created by computer scientists. The cultural significance of underwater discoveries is interpreted by art historians. The intricacy of the underwater archaeological record and the variety of ways these finds advance human understanding are reflected in this interdisciplinary approach. In addition to being archaeological wonders, the ancient cities that lie beneath our oceans serve as reminders of the extraordinary adaptability of our species, windows into alternate human society structures, and sources of useful advice for tackling contemporary issues. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you might have a dream in which you're floating above one of these underwater cities, gazing down through pristine water at streets where people used to walk, houses where families used to reside, and harbours where ships used to deliver news from far-off places. These are not merely remnants of a vanished era. Rather, they are proof of the ongoing human narrative that binds ancient coastal inhabitants to contemporary societies that are still learning how to coexist with the ocean. Although the ocean is good at keeping secrets, these submerged civilizations' mysteries are still being revealed by diligent research and developing technology. Every new finding broadens our knowledge of human resourcefulness, adaptability, and the timeless connection between land and sea that has molded our species over time. The past is still very much alive and well in these peaceful depths, where coral grows on temple walls and fish swim through old doorways, ready to impart knowledge to us that we are only now starting to understand. There is no real loss of the ancient cities that lie beneath the sea. They are merely waiting for us to gain the wisdom, to hear their voices through the ages, communicating to us through ruins and artifacts about the ageless human experience of living by a sea that is constantly changing. The speed at which the technology enabling these discoveries is developing is astounding. By looking for underwater anomalies in satellite imagery, artificial intelligence is now assisting archaeologists in locating possible sites. Large volumes of sonar data can be processed by machine learning algorithms, which can then identify patterns that point to man-made structures hidden beneath sediment and marine growth layers. Now, autonomous underwater vehicles that are outfitted with high-resolution cameras and sampling gear are able to explore environments and depths that are unattainable for human divers. Working non-stop, these robotic explorers map underwater environments with greater accuracy than is feasible from the surface. They can carefully record locations that might take human teams years to thoroughly survey by staying underwater for weeks at a time. These cutting-edge systems are gathering data to build intricate three-dimensional models of underwater archaeological sites. Researchers can now explore ancient cities without ever getting wet, thanks to virtual reality technology, looking at architectural details and spatial relationships that would be challenging to appreciate during actual dives. in ways that would not be feasible in the real underwater environment. These digital reconstructions are also opening up underwater archaeological sites to the general public. Virtual underwater archaeology experiences, which allow visitors to explore these submerged cities from the comfort of dry land, are starting to be incorporated into museums all over the world. Through interactive displays, visitors can explore construction details, interact with virtual artifacts, and gain insight into the daily routines of ancient coastal peoples. Underwater archaeology is now accessible to audiences who might not otherwise have the chance to visit real underwater sites thanks to these educational technologies. Conservation science as a whole has been transformed by the preservation methods created for underwater archaeological materials. Innovations in chemical treatment, environmental control, and long-term storage techniques have been prompted by the particular difficulties of conserving artifacts that have been submerged for centuries. Archaeological materials recovered from underwater sites are not the only ones that benefit from these developments. It is now feasible to perform in-depth stratigraphic analysis beneath the waves thanks to recent advancements in underwater excavation techniques. In order to read the environmental and cultural history preserved in these sedimentary sequences, archaeologists can now examine the layered deposits that build up over time in underwater sites. Instead of viewing these ancient cities as static snapshots, this temporal resolution enables researchers to comprehend how they changed and evolved over time. Underwater archaeology's interdisciplinary nature has given rise to new academic disciplines that integrate computer modeling, marine science, engineering, and conventional archaeological techniques. The study of geoarchaeology looks at how human settlements were impacted by changes in coastal environments over time. Ancient ocean conditions and marine ecosystems are recreated through marine paleoecology. The enormous volumes of data produced by underwater archaeological projects are analysed and interpreted using computational techniques in digital humanities approaches. Because underwater archaeological sites frequently cross national borders or are located in international waters, international cooperation has become crucial. UNESCO's conventions on underwater cultural heritage offer frameworks for cooperative research and protection of these sites. Researchers from several nations collaborate on joint expeditions, exchanging resources and knowledge while honouring each nation's claims to its cultural heritage. As new sites are found and new technologies are developed, the ethical and legal aspects of underwater archaeology keep changing. Archaeologists, governments, and local peoples must continue to discuss issues such as who owns underwater cultural heritage, how to safeguard sites from damage and looting, and how to share discoveries with descendant communities. Understanding how ancient coastal peoples reacted to previous episodes of climate change and sea level fluctuation is the subject of some of the most fascinating current research. Evidence of how these communities modified their building methods, resource management plans, and settlement patterns in response to shifting environmental conditions is preserved in the archaeological record. This information is directly applicable to contemporary coastal communities dealing with comparable issues. Ancient harbour technology research has uncovered complex engineering solutions that contemporary port designers are starting to recognise and use. Compared to their contemporary counterparts, ancient breakwaters, quays, and channel management systems frequently used more resilient and sustainable principles. Ancient underwater archaeological finds are now used as inspiration for some modern coastal protection projects. Ancient shipwrecks preserved in underwater archaeological settings offer unmatched insights into past maritime networks and technologies. Complete ships with their goods still inside provide comprehensive knowledge about historical maritime trade, navigation, and cross-cultural interactions. While cargo contents reveal trade relationships spanning great distances, ship construction wood can be used to pinpoint the location of vessels. Ancient lighthouses, navigational aids, and coastal markers have recently been found in underwater locations, demonstrating the advanced maritime infrastructure that underpinned prehistoric networks of trade and communication. These facilities, which used sophisticated knowledge of optics, structural engineering, and coastal dynamics to safely guide ships through hazardous waters, were frequently engineering marvels in their own right. Complex political and economic systems that coordinated activities across land and sea are revealed by the social organization needed to establish and sustain these coastal cities. Administrative records retrieved from submerged locations demonstrate how ancient bureaucracies oversaw everything from tide tables to harbour fees. Direct proof of business ties between remote communities can be found in trade contracts written on materials that survived underwater submersion. Ancient coastal peoples created complex risk management and insurance systems for maritime trade, according to archaeological evidence from underwater sites. Common commercial practices across large geographic areas are indicated by standardized weights and measures discovered at several underwater sites. Ancient maritime economies were far more integrated and complex than previously thought, as evidenced by the existence of banking and credit systems. Rich traditions of literature and art with a maritime influence can be found in the artistic and cultural artifacts retrieved from underwater archaeological sites. Submerged city mosaics, sculptures, and ornamental items frequently have oceanic imagery and marine themes. Shipboard musical instruments demonstrate how cultural customs were adjusted for maritime life. Religious artifacts show how spiritual beliefs combined elements of the land and the sea. Evidence of highly developed systems for knowledge transmission and preservation can be found in the discovery of ancient libraries and educational facilities in underwater locations. Direct access to ancient scientific, literary, and practical knowledge is provided by the survival of waterlogged but readable texts under conditions that would have destroyed them on land. Our perception of earlier intellectual accomplishments is being literally rewritten by these discoveries. Evidence of early experimental science and technology development has been found at a few underwater archaeological sites. Coastal peoples were actively creating new technologies to address real-world issues, as evidenced by the prototypes of navigational instruments, architectural innovations, and marine engineering solutions. There are striking parallels between these historical research and development endeavors and contemporary scientific methodologies. Important information about historical ocean conditions, climatic trends, and ecosystem shifts can be gleaned from the environmental data conserved in underwater archaeological contexts. Pollen, marine life, and chemical signatures found in sediment cores from archaeological sites help to reconstruct the ancient environmental conditions in remarkably detailed ways. Scientists are better able to comprehend the natural variability in ocean and climate systems thanks to this paleo-environmental data. Sophisticated knowledge of marine nutrition and food preservation methods is revealed by the analysis of ancient dietary remains from underwater sites. Modern nutritionists and food scientists are very interested in learning from the ways that ancient coastal populations processed, stored, and prepared seafood. Certain conventional preservation methods are turning out to be more successful than contemporary industrial ones. Traditional maritime medicine systems are supported by the discovery of antiquated medical texts and pharmaceutical materials at underwater locations. Ancient seafarers acquired specialized knowledge about how to treat illnesses and injuries that frequently arose during lengthy ocean voyages. Modern medical researchers are looking into some of these traditional remedies for possible therapeutic uses. Evidence of prehistoric environmental monitoring and prediction systems has been found during recent underwater excavations. People who lived along the coast evolved complex techniques for monitoring seasonal variations, forecasting weather patterns, and foreseeing natural disasters like storms and tsunamis. Astronomical observations biological indicators and subtle environmental cues that contemporary science is only now starting to recognize were frequently included in these traditional forecasting systems. Ancient coastal cities' social structures frequently included distinctive features tailored to maritime life. Underwater site evidence indicates that these communities created specialized legal frameworks to settle conflicts involving fishing rights, maritime trade, and the management of coastal resources. Modern approaches to ocean governance are still shaped by these ancient legal traditions, which also had an impact on later maritime law. Ancient coastal peoples maintained vast communication networks that connected far-flung communities through frequent maritime contact, according to archaeological evidence. Coordinated activities across entire ocean basins are demonstrated by the use of standardized symbols, navigation aids, and message systems at various underwater locations. Ancient globalization processes that linked disparate cultures via common maritime experiences were built on these communication networks. Ancient coastal life's religious and ceremonial elements frequently focused on the interaction between human societies and marine habitats. Evidence of complex rituals intended to guarantee safe travel, good weather, and a wealth of marine resources has been found at underwater archaeological sites. These rituals demonstrated an advanced knowledge of marine ecology, tidal patterns, and seasonal cycles. Evidence of old scientific instruments and observational facilities that are as sophisticated as contemporary oceanographic equipment can be found at some underwater locations. Ancient coastal peoples made systematic scientific observations of marine environments, as evidenced by tidal prediction devices, modern measurement tools, and weather monitoring systems. Everything from agricultural planning to navigation decisions was influenced by the information they gathered. Ancient maps and charts that accurately depict coastlines, ocean depths, and navigational hazards over large areas have been found at underwater sites, revealing intricate geographical knowledge. The mathematical and surveying abilities displayed in these cartographic accomplishments would not be seen in European traditions for many centuries. Certain ancient maps depict geographical relationships and features that have only lately been verified by contemporary satellite imagery. Evidence of complex ancient engineering projects that significantly altered coastal environments is still being found by archaeological excavations at underwater locations. The capabilities of harbour construction, channel dredging, and coastal protection projects are comparable to those of contemporary marine engineering projects. Sustainable methods that cooperated with, rather than opposed, natural processes were frequently used in these antiquated infrastructure projects. Unprecedented insights into ancient maritime fashion and functional clothing design can be gained from textile, and clothing remains preserved in underwater archaeological contexts. Features that contemporary outdoor clothing designers are rediscovering and adapting were incorporated into specialized clothing created for life at sea. Advanced knowledge of human factors in marine environments is demonstrated by weather-resistant construction methods, waterproof materials, and clothing systems made for abrupt climate changes. Specialized industries that grew up around maritime activities have been revealed by recent underwater site discoveries of ancient workshops and manufacturing facilities. Facilities for building ships, workshops for making sails, and centers for producing rope demonstrate how coastal communities established whole industries focused on assisting with maritime endeavors. These sectors frequently use methods and materials that contemporary manufacturers are researching for possible use. Materials recovered from underwater sites are starting to shed light on the educational systems that underpinned ancient maritime cultures. The practical knowledge of navigation, seamanship, and marine science was passed down from generation to generation through training manuals, educational tools, and test materials. Contemporary maritime education programs are starting to take inspiration From these antiquated teaching methods, every new finding deepens and complicates our understanding of ancient coastal civilizations as we continue to delve into these underwater archives of human history. These communities' advanced technologies, environmentally friendly behaviors, and flexible approaches provide important insights for contemporary societies dealing with comparable environmental issues. The patient accumulation of knowledge that these discoveries represent is reflected in the patience needed for underwater archaeological work. The enormous puzzle of human coastal history is completed with each artifact that is painstakingly removed from its underwater resting place. Every location that has been mapped and recorded retains priceless knowledge about how our ancestors perceived and engaged with marine environments. As you rest comfortably tonight, remember that patient archaeologists and their robotic helpers are still working slowly on the process of discovery somewhere beneath the world's oceans. Ancient cities wait patiently in the deep sea's gentle darkness, as they have for centuries, ready to reveal their secrets to anyone who approaches them with the appropriate deference and scientific curiosity. There is much more human history hidden in the ocean that covers the majority of our planet than we have yet to uncover. Every rising and falling tide traverses areas where people once lived, loved, worked, and dreamed of unimaginable futures. The cities that lie beneath the waves are not abandoned societies. Rather, they are patient educators who are ready to impart knowledge about adaptability, resiliency, and the enduring bond between people and the sea. Sweet dreams, and may you sleep as soundly under the soft embrace of the ocean's ever-changing tides as these ancient cities did. Now imagine yourself gazing up at the stars on a clear night while standing in your backyard. Our home galaxy, the Milky Way, is home to those far-off spots of light that are strewn like diamonds on black silk across the velvet darkness. Stretching 100,000 light-years from edge to edge, it is a stunning spiral of 400 billion stars. In what scientists refer to as the most exquisite cosmic ballet ever orchestrated, our galaxy is currently dancing through space alongside another galaxy as you read these words. But what if that dance picked up speed all of a sudden? What if, when you woke up for coffee tomorrow, our Milky Way collided with its partner instead of continuing its slow 4.5 billion year waltz? Andromeda, our closest galactic neighbour, is the partner in this cosmic dance. She's currently travelling at a speed of about 250,000 miles per hour, which seems incredibly fast until you consider that she won't reach us for almost 5 billion years at such great distances. In actuality, Andromeda is bigger than our Milky Way, with possibly 1 trillion stars as opposed to our galaxy's 400 billion. Her spiral arms are more than twice as wide as our own galaxy, spanning 220,000 light-years. Before we dive into our hypothetical collision, allow me to explain what makes this scenario so intriguing. In our thought experiment tonight, however, let's condense all that time into a single day and investigate what would happen in the most spectacular cosmic event imaginable. Galaxies are not made of solid material. They resemble, on a summer evening, picture a swarm of fireflies, each of which follows its own course while continuing to be a part of a larger, loosely organized group. Even though there are hundreds of billions of stars in our Milky Way, the distance between them is so great that the closest star would still be more than 4 miles away if our sun were reduced to the size of a grain of sand. This indicates something amazing. Stars hardly ever actually collide when galaxies collide. It's similar to seeing two swarms of gnats merge on a warm evening. They rarely come into direct contact with one another, but they move through one another, mix and dance. It is a gravitational, not a mechanical collision. Instead of a cosmic car crash, it's a rearranging of cosmic choreography. To get a sense of the magnitude of the situation, think about this. Even if you were to travel at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second, it would still take you 100,000 years to go from one spiral arm to the other in our galaxy. Any distance we perceive on Earth is dwarfed by the vast distances between stars. Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our Sun, is located 25 trillion miles away. If Earth were a marble, Proxima Centauri would be another marble 2,500 miles away. These distances produce a strange kind of collision in which the participants hardly notice one another on a personal level, but collectively alter the entire structure of their cosmic neighborhood. It's as if two enormous cities decided to merge, with the majority of the inhabitants carrying on with their daily lives, while the overall map of streets and neighborhoods gradually changed around them. Are you currently gazing out your window at real stars, or are you dreaming of darker skies because of the lights of the city? Do you live somewhere where the nights are really dark, and you can see the Milky Way's band extending like a river of light above you? Let's now enter our improbable situation. You get up in the morning, make your coffee, and go outside. If you like dawn skies and are an early riser, you may notice right away that something has changed. You've noticed a change in the constellation patterns you've known your entire life. Rearranging furniture in a room changes its appearance, but not dramatically, not like someone shaking a snow globe. The Andromeda Galaxy, which is larger than our own Milky Way, but is typically too faint to be seen with the naked eye, would now take up a sizable amount of the sky. Imagine a full moon that is 20 times larger and stretched into a graceful spiral. This ghostly spiral would be visible even during the day as a faint shimmer against the blue sky, resembling mother-of-pearl catching light. It would be easy to see the spiral structure, with two separate arms extending from a bright central bulge and dotted with dark dust lanes that form complex patterns resembling cosmic calligraphy. Though not in the disastrous way you might anticipate, the gravitational effects would be immediate and significant. The Sun would keep orbiting what was once the center of the Milky Way, and Earth would stay in its orbit around the Sun. However, as two galactic cores start their own complex dance, that center itself would be changing. Imagine being on a cosmic balcony and watching this collision unfold over the course of a single day instead of billions of years. The supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, which weighs 4 million times more than our Sun, would be in a gravitational tango with Andromeda's even more massive central black hole, which tips the scales at perhaps 100 million solar masses. In slow motion, spiral arms would be seen bending and stretching like taffy. Tidal tails are long, elegant ribbons of stars that flow between galaxies. Some would be cast into the emptiness, wandering the space between clusters of galaxies as cosmic nomads. Others would find themselves in stellar neighborhoods they had never been in before, settling into new orbits around the merged galactic center. The most dramatic event would occur when the two supermassive black holes at each galaxy's centers started their final approach to one another. Space would be stretched and compressed as gravitational waves from this cosmic pas de deux moved through it, causing ripples in space-time itself. If we had instruments sensitive enough, we might be able to detect these gravitational waves as a gentle pulsing, like a cosmic heartbeat from Earth. These waves would travel at the speed of light, carrying energy equal to the brightness of billions of suns, but passing through matter so gently that we would hardly notice their passage. The waves would convey details about the masses and spins of the black holes, the exact time of their merger, and even the behavior of space-time itself in such harsh circumstances. Listening to the universe itself sing the song of creation and destruction would be like that. However, this is where our story unexpectedly shifts from the catastrophic to the gentle. Galactic collisions would be much more peaceful in reality than in science fiction, which frequently depicts them as explosive catastrophes. It is possible that certain star systems will be hurled to the outskirts of the new, bigger galaxy. Yes, new constellations and stellar neighborhoods would permanently alter the night sky. However, because of the great distances I just described, life on Earth would probably continue, possibly oblivious to the cosmic renovation taking place all around it. The majority of space is empty, even more so than the most ideal vacuum that can be produced in earthly labs. In reality, when galaxies merge, they are merely rearranging the space between objects. Much like when a large library is reorganized, with the books representing stars and the shelves representing gravitational fields. The books themselves don't change, they just end up in new parts of a larger library. Our sun may end up in a different galaxy. Consider that for a moment as you become more comfortable with tonight's story. Rather than being situated in what we call the Orion Arm, a relatively quiet spiral arm about halfway out from the galactic center, we might wind up closer to the core of the new merged galaxy, which astronomers have already dubbed Milkomeda. The high night sky would blaze with more stars. The Milky Way band we see arcing overhead would be brighter and more complex, and space exploration would suddenly have many more interesting nearby destinations. From a cosmic standpoint, the collision that appears so dramatic and violent would actually present opportunities. Gas clouds may be stirred by gravity to form new solar systems. New stellar companions would join stars that had been alone for billions of years. Given that nearby star systems are now thousands of times closer than they are now, the increased star density in our area may make interstellar travel more feasible for future generations. This realization is incredibly reassuring. Even in its most dramatic moments, the universe is more inclined toward creation than destruction. What about the specifics of day-to-day existence during our hypothetical collision? Galactic collisions are cosmic collaborations rather than cosmic crashes, combining the resources and potential of two stellar communities to produce something bigger and more intricate. Starting with that first cup of coffee we mentioned, let's take a look at a normal day on Collision Earth. The morning sun would rise as usual, but astronomers around the world would be giddy with anticipation. Our most sensitive instruments would detect the collision's gravitational effects, but Earth's orbit would stay stable. Because it is neither too hot nor too cold, our planet is located in what astronomers refer to as the habitable zone around our sun, which is ideal for the existence of liquid water. The coffee would taste the same, and this Goldilocks zone would not change during the merger. When the birds sensed something significant happening in the world, they might sing their morning songs a little more urgently. Though their astronomy classes would suddenly become much more exciting than anyone had anticipated, children would still need to be prepared for school. The amazing thing about cosmic events is that they can be both the most significant thing occurring in the universe and wholly unrelated to whether you remembered to feed the cat. Updates from observatories all over the world would be broadcast on radio. Radio emissions from the collision zone would be monitored by the Very Large Array in New Mexico. Unprecedented images of galactic structure in real-time transition would be captured by the Hubble Space Telescope. By afternoon, amateur astronomers would be putting up record numbers of telescopes, and the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory would be detecting space-time ripples with exquisite precision, providing a soundtrack to go along with the visual spectacle overhead. There would be nothing like Andromeda ruling the sky in human history. Imagine attempting to see the entire spiral structure with your eyes. It would be similar to trying to view the entire facade of a magnificent cathedral while standing too close to it. To fully appreciate the majesty, the human eye would have to move back and forth. Professional observatories would be working overtime, abandoning their schedules entirely to document this unprecedented event. Binoculars would reveal individual star-forming regions in Andromeda's spiral arms, glowing clouds of gas where new stars are being born from the gravitational compression of the merger. As the two galaxies collided, radio telescopes would be listening for cosmic static, detecting signals from compressed and heated gas clouds. As the gravitational environment changed and evolved, X-ray telescopes would be monitoring for the high-energy signatures of matter falling into black holes. The internet would be both thriving and collapsing as billions of people attempted to share pictures, videos, and thoughts about what they were seeing. Even though most cameras couldn't fully capture the subtleties of what the human eye could see, amateur astronomy photos would be all over social media. For traditional photography to capture the collision, it would be too big, too diffuse, and too elegant. Universities would be hosting emergency seminars and hurriedly planned lectures where professors attempted to explain what was happening to audiences of captivated students and inquisitive members of the public. Long exposure photographs might be able to capture some of the fainter details, but they couldn't replicate the experience of watching two galaxies dance together across the sky in real time. People would cram themselves into planetariums in an attempt to comprehend the cosmic event taking place above them. With their astronomy exhibits suddenly more relevant than ever, science museums would be staying open later. The most amazing show would be presented in the evening. Like a permanent aurora, the combined light of our merger partner would cast a soft glow on the horizon as the sun sank. The gradual appearance of Andromeda's spiral arms in the fading sky would be a new stage in the typical progression from daylight to twilight to complete darkness. For the first time in human history, people could point to another galaxy and see its individual bright stars with the naked eye. The transition would be incredibly beautiful, like someone gradually turning up the dimmer switch on a cosmic chandelier. Without telescopes, the Andromeda red giants and blue supergiants would have appeared as jewels on dark velvet in the night sky. Children would grow up learning new constellations, combinations of Milky Way and Andromeda stars, creating patterns no human had ever seen. The bright blue stars would indicate regions of active star formation, while the cooler red giants would reveal older stellar populations, creating a complex picture of Andromeda's history written in starlight. As bright newcomers from our galactic neighbour joined familiar star patterns, traditional constellation names would no longer be sufficient. As humanity tried to make sense of a changed sky, new myths and stories would emerge. The psychological effects would be significant. We have gazed up at a night sky that is solely the property of our home galaxy for the entirety of human history. All of a sudden, we would be looking at the stars and the story of another galaxy. It would be similar to discovering that a whole new community had moved in next door overnight, bringing with it their own architecture, culture, and mysteries. Scientists would be working non-stop, recalculating everything. Star charts would require a thorough overhaul. Updates would be necessary for navigation systems that depend on stellar positions. As gravitational forces moved celestial landmarks, the meticulously charted cosmic distances that serve as the basis for contemporary astronomy would have to be recalculated. Since Earth's reference frame changed slightly in response to the shifting galactic gravitational field, the global positioning system satellites would require minor adjustments, and the parallax measurements we use to calculate distances to nearby stars would need to be redone as our reference frame shifted within the merging galaxy. The fact that we could even detect such subtle effects is a testament to the accuracy of modern technology, but GPS is precise enough that even slight variations in Earth's orientation with respect to far-off quasars would need to be corrected. Airlines would have to update their navigation systems, and the atomic clocks on GPS satellites, which depend on relativistic effects to remain precise, would have to be recalculated for the new gravitational environment. At sea, ships' celestial navigation would be a little off, but not enough to be a major issue. Mission planners would have to take into consideration the slowly changing positions of guide stars used for spacecraft orientation, but the ISS would continue to orbit the Earth as usual. Perhaps the most stunning change would be in our understanding of our place in the universe, but astronauts on the station would have perhaps the best seats in the house to watch the galactic merger, with their view unhindered by Earth's atmosphere. We currently consider ourselves to be Milky Way citizens, living in one galaxy out of hundreds of billions. We would be residents of Milkomeda, a galaxy formed by the union of two old stellar communities following our hypothetical collision. There would be twice as many stellar ancestors, twice as many cosmic neighbours, and twice as many opportunities for further research. The merger would also produce previously undiscovered kinds of celestial objects. Unlike anything that occurs in isolated galaxies, waves of star formation are triggered when gas clouds from two galaxies collide and compress. We may see the birth of enormous blue stars that burn brightly and quickly, illuminating vast swaths of space with their brilliant light despite only having a few million years to live. Some of these stellar nurseries would be visible to the unaided eye as glowing nebulae, cosmic clouds illuminated from within by newborn stars. These stellar giants would be visible even during the day, appearing as bright blue points against the azure sky. All of this star formation activity would create a faint background glow in the night sky, making even nights without the moon a little brighter than they are now. The Hubble Space Telescope and its successors would have their observation schedules totally transformed, and the increased light pollution from cosmic sources would be a welcome change. Rather than obscuring the stars, it would make them more numerous and brilliant. Astronomers would be examining the merger occurring nearby galaxies rather than pointing at far-off galaxies to learn more about how they merge. New findings about how black holes affect galactic structure, how gravity shapes stellar streams, and how the interstellar medium reacts to such enormous gravitational disruptions would be made every night. New instruments created especially to observe the ongoing collision would be added to ground-based telescopes. Specialized spectrographs would be installed on Chile's Very Large Telescope to examine the light from merging stellar populations. There would be practical considerations as well, of course, but the Atacama Large Millimeter Array would be mapping the cold gas and dust being stirred up by the gravitational encounter, revealing the raw materials from which new stars would eventually form. As the gravitational environment changed, satellite navigation systems would have to be adjusted. The shifting locations of celestial markers would have to be taken into consideration for long-term space missions. However, these are the kinds of issues that engineers are excited about rather than concerned about. Technical problems that push the limits of what is feasible. The sky would suddenly become much more interesting for the Mars missions that space agencies have been planning. As our solar system moves through the collision zone, Earth and Mars are both taking part in this cosmic dance. Future astronauts on the Red Planet would look up at night and watch the merger progressing from a slightly different perspective. The Earth's climate would essentially remain the same, but the thin Martian atmosphere would allow for even clearer views of the galactic merger than Earth's thicker atmosphere does. The impact is structural and gravitational rather than energetic enough to change the weather or temperature of our planet. Because of Earth's 23.5-degree axial tilt in its orbit around the Sun, the seasons would continue their well-known cycle. The Coriolis effect and temperature variations would drive ocean currents to follow their predetermined patterns. The cultural impact would be immediate and significant, but the delicate balance that makes Earth habitable would endure through the cosmic renovation taking place all around us. Any religion or mythology that uses the stars as part of its cosmology would have to suddenly explain a drastically altered sky. Astrologers would be completely perplexed, their ancient systems based on the positions of stars that were no longer in their traditional locations. The Big Dipper, which has been visible from Earth's northern hemisphere for thousands of years, might find itself joined by bright stars from Andromeda, creating new patterns that children would learn as naturally as their predecessors learned the old constellations. Despite their centuries-long separation, the collision would demonstrate how much both astrology and astronomy rely on the apparent stability of star positions over the course of human lifetimes. The cosmic merger would surely have mystical meaning for practitioners of the New Age, who would develop completely new systems of stellar divination based on the combined influences of two galaxies. The slowly changing patterns of light overhead would provide artists with previously unheard of inspiration. The delicate beauty of spiral arms extending across the sky would be difficult for painters to depict. The gravitational waves singing through space-time would inspire musicians to create symphonies. If you're still with me on this voyage through space and time, maybe you're wondering about the deeper implications of what we're imagining. Poets would find new metaphors in the cosmic dance surrounding Earth, drawing comparisons between galactic merger and human relationships, as well as between stellar streams and the flow of emotion. What would it mean for humanity if our cosmic environment underwent such a significant change? Human thought has undergone revolutions throughout history as a result of significant changes in our understanding of the universe. Our understanding of our place in creation was drastically altered when Copernicus demonstrated that the Earth orbits the Sun rather than the other way around. Hubble's discovery that there are galaxies beyond our own broadened our understanding of the cosmic scale beyond anything we could have ever imagined. We gained a new perspective on time and cosmic evolution when we discovered that the universe is expanding. Our hypothetical galactic collision would symbolize another such change. We would be observing cosmic evolution on a human timescale for the first time. We would be experiencing a galactic merger rather than learning about it from remote observations and computer simulations. It would give the universe a more immediate, intimate, and less abstract feel. The philosophical ramifications would be profound. The cosmos would no longer be something we view from afar, but rather something we actively engage with. Religious leaders' conceptions of the natural order or divine plan would have to take this cosmic event into account. The union of the two cosmic communities may be interpreted by some as a symbol of world peace. Others may see it as proof of creation's impermanence and ongoing change. Children born after the collision would grow up with a fundamentally different relationship to the night sky, and scientists would struggle with being participants in the very phenomenon they study, going from observers to actors in the cosmic drama. These kids would navigate using combinations of Milky Way and Andromeda stars, whereas earlier generations learned to locate the Big Dipper and Orion as well-known guides. If we can imagine galaxies having traditions, then characters from two distinct galactic traditions would appear in their bedtime stories about constellations. Schools would require new textbooks, planetariums would require new shows, and science museums would require new exhibits. They would be genuinely intergalactic citizens, at home among stars from various cosmic communities. People were so captivated by the shifting sky above them that the collision would produce a whole generation of amateur astronomers. As families attempted to obtain better views of the cosmic merger taking place around them, telescope sales would soar. The merger would speed up some aspects of astronomical research that currently take decades or centuries, and astronomy clubs would grow at an unprecedented rate as people tried to comprehend and share the experience of seeing such a rare cosmic event. Similar to how we examine photos of people of different ages to comprehend how humans develop and change, we currently study galactic evolution by observing different galaxies at different stages of development. Universities would create new departments for collision astronomy or real-time galactic studies. Graduate students would write dissertations on aspects of the merger that no human had ever been able to study before. We would be observing galactic evolution in real time during our collision, collecting data about gravitational interactions, star formation, and cosmic structure that would typically take thousands of lifetimes to collect. The entire framework for understanding our place in the cosmic hierarchy would change from Earth orbits the Sun, which orbits in the Milky Way galaxy, to something more complex and dynamic. Earth orbits the Sun, which is finding its new place in Milkomeda, the galaxy being born from the merger of our former home with our cosmic neighbor. Children would grow up with a more nuanced understanding of cosmic change and evolution than any previous generation. Not only would textbooks need to be completely rewritten, but completely new fields of knowledge would need to be created based on direct observation of galactic merger physics. In order to observe the merger from various perspectives and produce a three-dimensional map of how galaxies merge in ways that have never been possible to study before, we would want telescopes placed throughout the solar system. Astronomical observation equipment would be part of missions to Jupiter's moons. Beyond the practical and scientific ramifications, there is something profoundly poignant about envisioning such a transformation. Mars colonies would be founded in part to act as observation posts for research on the ongoing galactic collision. It would serve as a reminder of the universe's true dynamic nature, showing how even the most ostensibly permanent structures, galaxies themselves, are merely transient configurations that are always changing and evolving. Galaxies appear eternal on our normal timescale, but in reality, They are racing through space at hundreds of miles per second, taking part in a cosmic dance so grand that we can only see it through patient observation and careful measurement. Throughout human history, the Milky Way has essentially remained the same, and we anticipate that it will continue to do so into the future. However, our thought experiment serves as a reminder that even galaxies are transient. As the universe continues its own evolution toward an uncertain but fascinating future, they form, evolve, merge, and eventually, in the far future, face other fates. Strange as that may sound, there is solace in this impermanence. It implies that the natural order includes change, even significant change. It implies that disruption can result in previously unimaginable beauty, opportunities, and arrangements. After our galactic collision, the night sky would be more intricate, more layered with story and history than the comparatively simple spiral we see today. The universe has a magnificent ability to bring order out of seemingly chaotic chaos and to discover new ways to arrange matter and energy into intricate, beautiful, and meaningful patterns. We'd have 2 galaxies worth of stellar archaeology, the chronicle of star birth and death etched across the heavens, rather than just one galaxy's. Imagine the poetry that would arise from such a sky, where each point of light would carry a richer backstory that would connect us to a larger community of cosmic citizens, each with their own histories of planet formation, stellar evolution, and possibly even the emergence of life. People have been inspired by the stars for thousands of years, and they have made up myths and stories to explain the patterns they have observed in the sky. There would be completely new patterns to decipher, new tales to narrate, and new myths to construct after our collision. The merger would alter our perception of time itself, and the creative impact alone would make the cosmic upheaval worthwhile. Artists and writers would find new inspiration in the redesigned heavens. Significant events in human civilization today are measured in centuries or millennia. We would gain a visceral understanding of cosmic time, geological time, and the deep time scales that govern the universe as a result of the collision. This temporal perspective would be both empowering and humbling, as we would be witnesses to an event that takes longer than most species exist, condensed into a time frame we can understand and experience firsthand. Humbling, since it would serve as a reminder of how fleeting human lives are in comparison to cosmic processes. Our hypothetical merger would take place over a period of millions of times longer than the history of human civilization. However, it would also be empowering because it would show that humans can comprehend and forecast events on a much larger scale than what we can directly experience. The collision would also show how interconnected cosmic structures are. The merger would show how galaxies are connected by gravity over great distances, how they affect one another's evolution, and how the universe is more like a web of relationships than a collection of distinct objects, something we often think of as isolated island universes. From a technological standpoint, the merger would spur advancements in observation and measurement. The Milky Way, Andromeda, and dozens of smaller galaxies make up the local group of galaxies, which would emerge as a gravitationally bound community with its own intricate dynamics and evolutionary history. To investigate gravitational effects in real time, we would create new kinds of instruments. To forecast the evolution of stellar streams, we would develop more accurate computer models, perhaps employing networks of space-based telescopes functioning as interferometers with previously unheard-of resolution. We would devise novel techniques to map the three-dimensional structure of the merging galaxies. The data storage needs alone would be astounding. Every significant observatory on the planet would be gathering previously unheard-of volumes of data regarding the collision, building archives that would occupy scientists for decades. In just 1 year, the merger would produce more astronomical data than we currently gather over many decades. To make sense of the deluge of information, new methods for data analysis and pattern recognition would have to be created. As our hypothetical journey draws to a close, it's amazing to think about this. Although we've been speculating about what might happen if this collision happened tomorrow, the actual collision is already happening. Andromeda is currently traveling at that constant 250,000 miles per hour toward our galaxy as you read these words. This collision will actually occur somewhere in the far future, long after our sun has run out of fuel, and long after Earth has undergone changes due to stellar evolution. The gravitational dance has already started, but it is so subtle that it requires highly advanced instruments to detect. Though not in a single day, but over millions of human lifetimes, the night sky will change in the ways we have been envisioning. The amazing merger we can only imagine will be witnessed by future beings, whether they are human descendants or completely different forms of life. That timeline is both inspiring and humbling. It serves as a reminder that we are all a part of a greater story than our own lives, one that is longer than human civilization, and one that is grander than anything we can directly experience. However, we are advanced enough to foresee it, envision it, and appreciate the beauty of the concept. The collision also emphasizes one of the most amazing aspects of contemporary astronomy, our capacity to predict the future. We have evolved into cosmic fortune tellers, deciphering the future from the current positions and velocities of celestial objects. We are able to forecast cosmic events billions of years ahead of time by using mathematical modeling and meticulous observation. We know when galaxies will merge, when planets will be engulfed by their expanding suns, and when stars will run out of fuel. We are now citizens of deep time, having transcended the immediate present. This ability to predict the future offers us a distinct viewpoint on time itself. Astronomy allows us to comfortably consider billions of years, whereas the majority of human experience is focused on timescales of minutes, hours, days, or at most decades. By stretching our temporal imagination, it makes us citizens of cosmic time as well as of the present. The merger would also reveal something lovely about the nature of cosmic change. We can think back on events that took place before Earth formed and forecast events that will happen long after our planet is gone. The galactic collision would demonstrate that cosmic change can be gentle and creative, despite the fact that we typically think of astronomical events as violent and destructive. Stars exploding, black holes consuming matter, planets being torn apart. As we conclude our journey through this imagined galactic collision, I want you to go outside tonight, if the weather permits, and gaze up at the real sky above you. The universe has ways of changing itself that preserve beauty while creating new complexity. All of the stars you see are residents of our Milky Way galaxy, dispersed in their well-known patterns. However, keep in mind that many of those same stars will still be shining in about 4 billion years, albeit in different configurations as part of the merged galaxy Milkomeda. The photons of starlight that are touching your eyes tonight have traveled for years, decades, or even centuries to get there. When the galaxy was arranged slightly differently, and the stars were in slightly different positions, they left their stellar sources. In the current sky, you can see the history of our galaxy written in light. When you look up again tomorrow night, keep in mind our thought experiment. That light contains information about stellar composition, temperature, age, and motion. A cosmic library written in the language of electromagnetic radiation. Imagine the spiral arms of an approaching galaxy filling the sky. Imagine brand new constellations composed of stars from two distinct cosmic communities. The universe has spent almost 14 billion years organizing matter into ever more intricate and exquisite patterns. Think about the gentle nature of even the most dramatic cosmic events and how change, even galactic change, tends toward creativity rather than destruction. Our galaxy is one of the most spectacular examples of these configurations, with hundreds of billions of stars arranged in elegant spirals, dotted with planets, moons, and perhaps even life. Instead of destruction, two such arrangements combine to create a new kind of beauty, a more intricate pattern, and a richer narrative written in gravity and starlight. However, our hypothetical collision would also serve as a profound reminder of what home is all about. Earth would continue to be Earth. The sun would continue to be the sun. The orbital dance of the solar system would essentially remain unaltered. The collision would teach us that home is portable. It turns out that home is defined by the local relationships that sustain us, not by the galactic neighborhood we happen to find ourselves in. These relationships include the magnetic field that shields us from harmful radiation, the gravitational embrace between Earth and Moon, and the ideal distance from our star that keeps liquid water. Because we would still have each other, the blue marble of Earth spinning in the black emptiness, and the familiar face of the Moon lighting our nights, we would still feel at home as our solar system finds its new home in Milkomeda. Perhaps the most consoling lesson from our thought experiment is that although the cosmic addresses may change, the fundamental relationships that enable life would not. Even the most significant cosmic shifts take place in ways that protect the most significant things. The universe appears to be biased in favor of continuation, looking for ways to keep complex systems going while their surroundings change. If you've enjoyed this cosmic journey tonight, please let me know where you are in the world and what you see when you look up at your local portion of the Milky Way's spiral arms. Life finds a way, not just in the biological sense, but also in the broader sense that complexity and beauty persist through cosmic change. Are you in a city where only the brightest stars shine through the light pollution? Or are you in a place with dark skies and the galaxy's band of light stretching overhead? Though it would appear differently depending on your latitude and the season, the collision we have envisioned would be equally stunning from anywhere on Earth. The merger would progress differently for someone observing from the northern hemisphere than for someone observing from the southern hemisphere. The last thing I want to say to you tonight is that the entire planet would turn into a single observatory, and 7 billion people would be there to witness the most amazing cosmic event in the history of the universe. Instead of being destructive, change, even drastic change, can be constructive. In addition to rearranging our cosmic neighborhood, the merger we have envisioned would bring together previously disparate star communities, opening up new opportunities and beauties. Even when, especially when, the universe is going through its most drastic changes, it would serve as a reminder that we live in a universe that tends toward greater complexity and beauty. As you go to sleep tonight, you might dream of spiral galaxies dancing through space, of star streams flowing between cosmic partners, or of a night sky with twice as many stellar neighbors as we currently have. The Milky Way and Andromeda are already starting their slow dance toward merger, and we are fortunate enough to be conscious observers of this cosmic ballet. It's a gentle way to end our journey, with the knowledge that even the most dramatic events in the universe can unfold with grace and beauty, creating new wonders instead of destroying old ones. Sweet dreams, and may your sleep be filled with the soft motion of galaxies, discovering new ways to shine together in the vast, creative darkness of space. We can make predictions about its outcome, envision its beauty, and take solace in the knowledge that the universe is constantly creating new arrangements of matter and energy that fill the darkness with light. Keep in mind that you are composed of star material and that you are a planet orbiting a star in a galaxy that is presently performing the most exquisite dance the universe has ever produced. The idea of cosmic metamorphosis, where the impossible is possible and the sky has twice as many stars as it does tonight, is a lovely one to carry into sleep and dreams.
Imagine now entering a doorway in time as well as space. Here, the air feels different, crisp, with an old world energy that makes your arms stand on end. This valley was somehow traversed by the great dying that took the mammoths, cave bears, and giant ground sloths, and you find yourself on the edge of a world that never quite let go of its ice age giants. You see shapes that shouldn't be there as the morning mist rises from a river that has no name in any contemporary language. A family of woolly rhinoceroses glides through the tall grass at a leisurely pace, their thick coats shining with dew. Like ancient ivory sculptures, their horns gleam in the early morning light. The ground trembles a little in the distance, not from an earthquake, but from the deliberate steps of something impossibly large moving toward the water's edge. It could have been, But this is not our world. The great extinction that struck the planet some 12,000 years ago never quite finished its job on this planet. Humans learned to coexist with creatures that seem to have been lifted from both nightmares and dreams, and Pleistocene-era pockets persisted like lost chapters in an ancient book. Even in the dead of winter, the village remains warm because it is situated in a natural depression between two hills that perfectly directs the wind. Now, however, it is not winter. Rather, it is the season known to the locals as the growing light, when the sun continues to shine longer each day and the ice flowers in the fields outside the settlement start to bloom. As it has for generations, morning arrives here with gentleness. Though she stopped counting years ago when the number reached more fingers than she could spare, Nayeli is always the first to rise. The cold stone floor of her home aggravates her joints, but they have been complaining about it for decades, and she has learned to ignore them. She steps into air so pure, it seems to ring like a bell, pushing aside the mammoth hide that acts as her door. Below her, the village stretches out, maybe 30 houses made of wood, stone, and bone, their roofs covered in grass and dirt. A number of chimneys emit smoke, but it's not the sharp stench of anything burning that shouldn't be there. Rather, it's the sweet smoke of pine and dried mammoth dung. The grazing grounds where the most eccentric people in the village spend their nights are visible from Nayeli's doorway. 3 young mammoths stand close to a group of birch trees, hardly bigger than the elephants you might see in zoos around the world. They touch each other in what appears to be conversation as their trunks move continuously, testing the air. They were born here, raised with human children, and fed by human hands when their own mothers were unable to produce enough milk, so they are not wild animals. Even after all these years, the sight continues to amaze her. One of the first people to suggest that they might not have to hunt every big animal they came across was her great-grandfather. In order to benefit both species, maybe some could be brought close, given care, and permitted to coexist with humans. Back then, it had seemed impossible. Now, it seems like the most natural thing in the world to watch a human toddler giggle close by as a mammoth calf tosses dirt onto its back. But coming to this realization had not been simple. The ancient tales, the ones that have been handed down through the ages like priceless jewels, describe the period of education, when people first realized that they were living in a world with minds that were different from their own, but still minds. As usual, the morning routine starts. With arms full of wild grasses and new branches, Kyle, one of the village's beast speakers, approaches the mammoth enclosure. He moves deliberately and walks slowly. The mammoths are familiar with him and have faith in him, but daily respect needs to be reaffirmed. The largest of the 3, a female they refer to as Stormwalker because of her apparent ability to forecast weather patterns, greets him by extending her trunk. Since he was just old enough to walk steadily, Kale has worked with mammoths. Before him, his father, and before that, his father's father had been a beast speaker. Although the ability isn't strictly inherited, it appears to run in some families like a river that travels the same path. Above all, it takes patience. The patience to realize that, depending on its pitch and duration, a mammoth's rumbling can indicate warning, greeting, contentment, or hunger. The forbearance to realize that what appears to be stubbornness may actually be an effort to convey a crucial message. Placing the fodder aside, he presses his hand to Stormwalker's side and feels her heart's slow, strong beat. As is typical for her kind, she has been pregnant for almost 2 years. If everything goes according to plan, the village will welcome its first mammoth born solely under human care in a few months. He feels proud and anxious at the same time. Although they have gained a great deal of knowledge about maintaining the health and happiness of adult mammoths, bringing a new life into the world is always a risk. Other villagers start their daily chores as the sun rises higher. Human voices and the occasional trumpet call of a mammoth blend with the sound of stone tools cutting wood and bone. Youngsters engage in activities that any parent would recognize, such as tag, hide and seek, and basic skill competitions. But the animals on their playground are completely larger than them. Siku, who is only 8 years old, has declared one of the mammoth calves to be her special friend. She is currently sitting next to the young bull in the grass, and they are both observing two enormous beavers as they construct their dam in the stream that flows past the village. Compared to their smaller cousins that live in our world, these beavers are completely different. They are bear-sized, have chisel-like teeth, and have an engineering instinct that rivals that of human builders. The village and the giant beavers have a more cooperative than proprietorship relationship. The ponds and streams that supply fresh water and draw fish are kept up by the beavers. In exchange, the humans share some of the foods that the beavers especially like, such as young shoots and roots that humans collect but don't need for themselves, and defend the beavers' territory from the enormous cave bears that occasionally wander down from the mountains. It took generations to create and preserve this intricate web of relationships. Every species in this valley has established a place for itself through a sort of negotiated coexistence that necessitates ongoing care and adaptation rather than dominance or submission. As is customary during the growing light, the afternoon brings tourists to the village. 3 adults and 2 children lead what looks to be a wounded giant ground sloth as they approach from the south. The humans next to the sloth provide gentle support and encouragement as it moves slowly, favoring its right back leg. They're not strangers, but they're also not villagers. They come from a community 2 days' walk away that was dedicated to caring for the enormous sloths that used to roam these areas in great numbers. In addition to being a creature in need of assistance, the injured animal serves as a bridge between groups of people who have come to understand that they are a part of a wider family that includes species other than their own. In keeping with tradition, Nayeli extends her hands palms up to greet the guests, indicating that she is harmless and does not carry any weapons. The gesture is returned, and soon the entire group is heading toward the village's healing grounds, where animal medicine practitioners practice and store their supplies. Both physically and culturally, the healing grounds hold a unique position in the village. They are situated in a grove of old trees that appear to have existed here since the beginning of time, close to the settlement's center. In addition to offering cover, the trees appear to calm both people and animals. Some residents of the village think that the trees themselves have therapeutic properties. Others believe it's just that the grove maintains optimal recovery conditions by remaining warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. Between these opinions is most likely where the truth lies. The injured sloth is examined by Jorik, the village's expert healer, using hands that have learned to read trauma and pain just by touch. Despite its size and powerful claws, the sloth is remarkably patient during the examination. The villagers have discovered that these animals are inherently kind unless they are in danger or defending their young. This one appears to be aware that people are attempting to assist it. It looks like a deep cut that might have resulted from falling onto jagged rocks. The animal is clearly uncomfortable and moves slowly, which can be explained by the infection. Jorik uses fungi and herbs that he learned how to collect and prepare from his teachers to make a poultice. Both humans and animals can benefit from some of these treatments. Others are species specific, acquired over many generations through meticulous observation and the occasional tragic error. Jorik tells the tale of how his people initially discovered how to cure the enormous ground sloths while he is at work. Perhaps 50 years ago, during a particularly severe winter, a small group of sloths were stranded in a canyon by an avalanche. After all, why risk human lives for creatures that weren't even under human control? The humans could have left them to their fate. However, the humans were prompted to act by the way the stranded sloths cried out to one another, as well as by their apparent distress and intelligence. They planned a rescue and cleared enough rock for the sloths to escape using wooden levers and ropes. Instead of abandoning the animal that had suffered severe injuries in the avalanche, the humans brought it back to their community and made an effort to treat its injuries. They learned a lot about the physiology and behavior of sloths from the process. More significantly, the creature appeared to recall what the humans had done even after it recovered. It didn't go very far when it was at last strong enough to go back into the wild. It stayed close to the human settlement, and when other sloths in the area became injured or ill, word somehow got to this first patient who would lead the sick to the humans for assistance. This relationship developed into something special over time. The sloths started exchanging information about which roots and plants were safe to eat and which were not. Their digestive systems were capable of processing foods that humans would find poisonous, but they were also able to find safe substitutes that people had never thought of. Humans reciprocated by offering medical attention and defense against the enormous predators that even enormous ground sloths occasionally couldn't repel on their own. The injured sloth appears to be getting better as evening draws near. Much of the infection has been drawn out by the poultice, and the animal is breathing more easily now. The prognosis is good, but treatment will take a few more days. The guests from the southern settlement are cordially invited to remain in the village while their companion recovers. As usual, the evening meal is a communal event. Both residents and guests are seated at long tables made of split logs, and the food symbolizes the abundance that results from coexisting peacefully with the environment. Mammoth milk cheese, fish from the beaver ponds, berries and nuts collected from the forest, and vegetables cultivated in gardens fertilized with mammoth dung and strategically positioned close to the dwellings to keep out smaller herbivores. The villagers brew fermented berry wine in ceramic pots, and as the meal goes on, stories start to flow as freely. In addition to others they have met along the way, the visitors share news from their settlement. By caring for a herd of giant deer that roams between their lands, 3 villages to the east are reportedly forming a new alliance. Strange tracks have been reported to have been discovered close to the northern mountains. These could be the remains of a species that is believed to be extinct, even in this world where extinction appears to have been avoided. Old Henrik, whose memory goes back farther than anyone else's, recounts the Great Choice story once more, but he does so in a unique way each time, as though the tale were a living entity that evolved and changed with each retelling. Instead of merely hunting the megafauna to extinction, it tells the tale of how their ancestors managed to coexist with them. Humans realized they were at a crossroads at one point, Henrik said. They were extremely proficient hunters thanks to the tools and methods they had developed. They were capable of defeating animals that were many times their size, and they had started to do so successfully that some species were going extinct. They had to decide whether to keep going in this direction and use their powers to assert their superiority over all other species, or to look for an alternative. Dominance was argued for by some. Humans were shrewd and flexible. They could change the world to their benefit if they could get rid of possible rivals and dangers. Others argued for an alternative strategy, one that acknowledged the enormous creatures in their environment as partners in the intricate dance of life that maintained the world's equilibrium rather than just as resources to be eaten. The argument was not easily or swiftly resolved. For generations, it was unclear what would happen because different groups made different decisions. However, communities that opted for partnership gradually started to prosper in ways that those that opted for dominance did not, through trial and error, success and failure. The partnership approach necessitated learning new abilities. Humans had to learn how to comprehend, interact with, and take care of animals rather than just how to hunt them. They had to learn psychology and behavior, medicine and nutrition, and the delicate art of interspecies negotiation. However, the benefits were remarkable. A mammoth was more valuable alive than dead because it offered labor, transportation, and cooperation in tasks that no human could complete on their own, in addition to milk and the occasional fur. Living water management systems were created by giant beavers. Ground sloths developed into walking botanical encyclopedias. When properly understood and respected, even the dreadful cave bears proved to be excellent collaborators for some kinds of work. The fire in the middle of the village burns low as Henrik's story comes to a close, creating dancing shadows on the faces surrounding it. Stormwalker trumpets softly in the distance, and other mammoths from settlements over the horizon respond to her call. This village is connected to a network of communities throughout the continent by this sound, which unites them all in their shared vision of a world in which megafauna and humans coexist as allies rather than adversaries. The villagers gradually start to return to their homes as the fire goes out and the stars come out. However, some people still exist, especially the younger adults, who frequently use these evenings to talk about their own dreams and stories. As usual, the topic of discussion shifts to the future tonight. A young woman named Mira talks about her dream of creating new trade routes that would link far-flung communities. Mira has demonstrated remarkable skill in working with the giant deer that come to the village every spring. She imagines mammoth-led caravans that can transport goods over great distances and through difficult-to-navigate terrain. Her friend Jorik the Younger, who is named after the healer but is unrelated, discusses his selective breeding experiments in an attempt to create mammoth strains that might be smaller and better suited for particular jobs. It's a contentious endeavor because some people feel that altering the ancient animals in any way betrays the alliance that has so successfully benefited both species. Others contend that helping these species adjust to a changing environment is just another example of cooperation, and that adaptation and change are inherent aspects of life. A low rumbling sound that seems to originate from the earth itself breaks up the conversation. Everyone freezes for a second, listening carefully. The 8-year-old Siku, who has made friends with the mammoth calf, then bursts into happy laughter. She points to the sleeping area where the young mammoth lies on his side, his legs twitching as though he were running while he slept. "He's dreaming again," she says. The rumbling sound is his sleep trumpeting, which the villagers have come to associate with especially vivid mammoth dreams. The tense moment gives way to laughter. There are moments of unadulterated joy that remind everyone why they chose this path, even in a world where humans coexist with animals that could easily kill them. Whatever dreams the young mammoth may have, they appear to be joyful ones. The final discussions around the fire shift to more subdued topics as the night grows darker. Work plans for tomorrow, worries about relatives in other communities, and soft rumors of romances blossoming and alliances developing between people and their animal companions. Even these discussions eventually wane as the village falls asleep. It's not a quiet sleep though. The breathing of sleeping mammoths, the splash of enormous beavers laboring in the moonlight, and the distant cry of a cave bear resonating from the mountains are just a few of the sounds that fill the night and would be incomprehensible to our contemporary ears. These are not the sounds of peril, but rather of a world in which all living things are aware of their place and function within the larger scheme of things. For a while longer, Nayeli lies awake in her home, listening to these night sounds and reflecting on the day that has gone by. The wounded sloth is recovering nicely. The mammoth pregnancy is developing as it should. The kids are becoming resilient and acquiring the abilities necessary to uphold the alliances their forefathers formed. However, she also considers the difficulties that will come. Though not significantly, there has been a noticeable change in the climate. The summers are getting a little warmer and the winters are getting a little shorter. The ranges of some plant species and the animal species that rely on them are changing. In addition to exposing new areas, the retreating great ice sheets that still cover portions of the northern continent are altering the weather and wind patterns that people have come to rely on. Both human communities and their animal companions will need to adjust to these changes. When migrating to new areas, some species might require assistance, others might require help adjusting to new environmental factors or food sources. As the world around them changes, the partnerships that once seemed so solid and long-lasting might need to be renegotiated. However, Nayeli is not depressed by these difficulties. In the past, her people have overcome obstacles by banding together. She has discovered that the secret is to view change as a chance to improve relationships and foster understanding, rather than as something to be feared or resisted. As she drifts off to sleep, she considers Stormwalker's unborn calf and the environment that the young mammoth will grow up in. Will the ice sheets keep receding in this world? Will the ecological niches created by climate change be filled by new species? Will it be necessary for people and their partners to acquire new abilities, collaborate in new ways, and comprehend one another in new ways? She finds the questions fascinating rather than concerning. After all, every generation encounters changes and manages to adjust while maintaining the most essential aspects of life. She feels that the fundamental idea that has led her people for many generations, the understanding that humans are not distinct from the natural world, but rather a part of it, and that their success is dependent on the success of every other species they coexist with, is more significant than any specific species or climate arrangement. As always, morning returns with fresh opportunities and challenges. To the relief of its human companions, the injured sloth continues to show signs of recovery. Stormwalker appears more agitated than normal, which raises the possibility that her time is running out. After repairing their dam, the giant beavers created a new pond that will serve as a home for fish and water birds. But there's also something surprising this morning. From the west, a lone traveler leads a creature that has never been seen in the village. It is obviously a horse, but it is bigger than any horse that has ever existed. It has a coat that changes color in the sun and a demeanor that conveys intelligence and self-reliance. Equally fascinating is the traveler herself. No one can identify the materials used to make her clothes, and the tattoos on her skin are not typical of any known settlement. Although the underlying language appears familiar, her accent is so thick that it is nearly impossible to understand what she is saying. She comes from far to the west, beyond the great mountains that most of them have never seen. The villagers discover after careful questioning and patient repetition. She explains that although her people have coexisted peacefully with these massive horses for many generations, their homeland is changing in ways that make it challenging for them to maintain their traditional way of life. She claims that the horses are some of the last of their kind. The majority of their preferred habitat has been lost due to climate change, and the population that remains is too small to survive on its own without help. In order to find communities that might be willing to give some of the horses new homes and possibly share knowledge about how to help species adapt to changing conditions, her people have sent her eastward. Nayeli had been contemplating just such a challenge the previous evening. This species is in crisis, and its human partner is bringing it here to ask for cooperation in solving a problem that impacts both the human and animal communities, rather than charity. The proposal is discussed by the village council. It's a group of people whose knowledge and experience have gained them the respect of their neighbors, not a formal council in the sense that we might think of it. With the injured sloth sleeping soundly close by and the enigmatic horse grazing beneath the watchful gaze of several inquisitive kids, they sit in a circle in the healing grove under the shade of the old trees. Practical issues are raised in the discussion that follows. Do they have the means to care for more large animals? Do they know enough about how horses behave and what they need to take care of? How quickly could they learn what they would need to learn? However, the discussion goes beyond pragmatic issues. Fundamentally, the question is whether they have an obligation to assist in the preservation of endangered species, even if those species are distant and have no historical ties to their community. Some contend that their primary obligations are to their own community and current animal partners. They have learned to coexist peacefully with the surrounding species for generations. Taking on additional duties might upset that balance and jeopardize everything they have worked so hard to achieve. Others note that when they initially started forming alliances with megafauna, their ancestors had to make similar choices. Instead of concentrating solely on their immediate survival, those early humans decided to take chances in order to achieve a greater goal. Maybe it's time for their generation to make similar decisions. With breaks for meals and taking care of other daily responsibilities, the conversation lasts all morning and into the afternoon. A consensus slowly starts to form. Due to their limited resources and expertise, they are unable to take in all of the Western horses. However, they can take in a few, get to know their needs, and possibly use them as a springboard to establish other populations in communities with different capacities and resources. More significantly, they can impart their knowledge about assisting species in adapting to their changing environment. Their encounters with the mammoths, the beavers, and the enormous ground sloths have taught them methods that may be useful for horses and other animals dealing with comparable difficulties. The Western visitor accepts the village's offer as the sun sets on the second day, clearly relieved and appreciative. Two of her horses, both young females who could eventually add to a breeding population, will be left here. In exchange, she will bring with her extensive understanding of adaptation strategies, as well as assurances of continued assistance and communication. The evening meal turns into a celebration of the new partnership and the ideal it stands for. Survival in a world that is constantly changing depends more on collaboration, communication, and a readiness to support one another in adjusting to new situations than it does on isolation or resource hoarding. The Western traveler tells tales of her homeland and the struggles her people face as the meal comes to an end. The distribution of plants and the flow of rivers are changing as a result of the great mountains surrounding their valley losing their glaciers. While some species find it difficult to adjust, others are flourishing in the new environment. Her people have experienced failures that have taught them hard lessons about the limits of intervention, but they have also had some successes in aiding species transition. The villagers, who have witnessed comparable changes in their own area, find great resonance in her stories. Beyond the immediate horse arrangement, bonds are formed through shared experiences. By the end of the evening, the foundation for a much more extensive relationship between the two communities has been established, one that may offer reciprocal assistance as both deal with the difficulties of a changing global environment. There is a different kind of drama on the third morning. As the sun rises, the pregnant mammoth stormwalker goes into labor. This is the moment that Kale and the other beast speakers have been dreading and preparing for. They are very knowledgeable about caring for adult mammoths, but they have never assisted in a mammoth's birth from beginning to end, and giving birth is always dangerous. There are similarities and differences between the process and human birth, similar in that it calls for endurance, encouragement, and the ability to step in if issues develop. The scale is significantly larger, and the typical rhythms and sounds are not like anything that people have ever heard. With the help of the other mammoths, who appear to comprehend their part in the process, Stormwalker works through the morning with amazing poise. The villagers congregate at a respectful distance, providing support by being present without crowding or interfering unless absolutely necessary. When the birth finally takes place, it happens quickly and dramatically. A tiny, damp figure is lying in the grass behind Stormwalker, already straining to stand on unsteady legs. And then she is straining with the effort of labor. Many people are moved to tears by the sight, not only because of the miracle of new life, but also because this birth signifies the survival of a species that might have easily gone extinct. The male calf appears healthy and alert, despite being smaller than anticipated. He was able to stand and find his way to his mother's milk in less than an hour. Exhausted but seemingly in good health, Stormwalker shows the same patience she has displayed throughout her pregnancy as she leads him through his first feeding. Many people in the village realize that this is an unprecedented moment as word of the successful birth spreads. Since the beginning of the species' evolution, this might be the first mammoth to be born solely in human care. In contrast to the hunters his wild ancestors learned to fear, the calf will grow up knowing humans as partners and protectors. However, the moment is significant in more ways than one. The successful birth demonstrates that humans can sustain megafauna reproduction in addition to their survival. This creates opportunities that were never given much thought by earlier generations. Could they aid in the recovery of endangered species? Could they steer the development of human-animal relationships in ways that are advantageous to both parties? The acknowledgement of new responsibilities tempers the celebrations that follow the birth, which continue long into the evening. No human currently has the knowledge and abilities needed to raise a mammoth calf. As Stormwalker assumes the role of mother, with all the protective instincts that go along with it, the village's relationship with her will need to change. Longer-term questions will also require answers. As the young mammoth matures and forms its own personality, how will it interact with people? Will it have to work out its own terms, or will it accept the partnership arrangements that its mother has lived under? When it reaches breeding age, will it be able to build suitable relationships with possible mates, or will its unique background cause problems? Although there are currently no answers to these questions, they illustrate the types of difficulties that the village has come to welcome. Every new advancement, effective modification, and unanticipated difficulty contributes to the body of knowledge that supports the success of all their collaborations. The village's daily activities, which include encounters with creatures that most of human history would consider mythical, return to something approaching routine as the fourth day dawns. Although its human companions choose to stay in the village for a few more days to make sure the healing process is finished, the injured sloth is now strong enough to walk on its own. Under his mother's care and the community's attentive watch, the newborn mammoth calf, now known as Little Thunder for his startlingly loud vocalizations, continues to flourish. As the Westerner gets ready to leave, she realizes that she is no longer traveling alone. Two young villagers who have both worked with large animals before have offered to go with her some of the way home. They will assist in caring for the horses she is leaving behind and will return to her people with comprehensive knowledge of the adaptation methods created in this valley. More significantly, they will act as living connections between communities that might need to help one another in ways they haven't yet thought of. These past few days have seen a wide range of discussions, from philosophical issues regarding the relationship between humans and nature to practical animal husbandry. The question of whether their way of life could be expanded to accommodate larger populations is one that is frequently raised. Small towns where people know one another and where the number of animals can be controlled by close personal ties and close observation are ideal for the partnership approach. However, what would happen if the current size of human populations were exceeded? Could a town of 300 or a city of 3,000 be governed by the same rules that govern a village of 30? The partnership model, according to some, has inherent limitations. Individual animal-human relationships take time and care that cannot be sustained on a larger scale. Others contend that by enabling more specialization and advanced care systems, larger populations may actually increase the viability of some partnerships. The question isn't scholarly. Rumor has it that communities to the south have expanded significantly while retaining their animal alliances. If those rumors are accurate, they imply that the ideas cultivated in tiny communities like this one may have more uses than anyone has yet to recognize. However, there are also stories that serve as warnings. Tragic outcomes for both people and animals can be found in tales of communities that attempted to grow too rapidly and took on more animals than they could adequately care for. At larger scales, it can be much more difficult to maintain the balance that seems so natural in small groups, and the consequences of failure are proportionately more severe. As the morning goes on, these theoretical conversations are anchored in the day-to-day tasks. The enormous beavers need care. They need help fixing a leak in one of their dams, and they appear to prefer human help. Humans must perform this delicate work in cold water with animals whose size and strength could easily injure anyone who makes a thoughtless move. However, the beavers are exceptionally kind companions, employing their enormous fangs with surgical accuracy and somehow coordinating their activities with human assistants who move considerably more slowly and erratically than their own. When the repair is finished, both species appear to be happy with the outcome, even though it takes the majority of the morning. The project is made possible by the beavers' natural strength and engineering instincts, while the humans have contributed the planning abilities and fine motor control that the beavers lack. The villagers occasionally forget how extraordinary this type of interspecies cooperation would seem to most humans throughout history, because it has become so commonplace. A fundamental shift in perspective regarding the relationship between humans and the natural world is represented by the notion that creatures of different species could collaborate as true partners, each contributing their special skills to achieve common objectives. A different kind of visitor arrives in the afternoon, a family of cave bears that the locals haven't seen in months. In contrast to beavers and mammoths, these are not partners. The kind of close working relationships that characterize village life are not possible for cave bears because they are too solitary and unpredictable. However, they are also not adversaries. Between the human population and the bears that occasionally traverse their territory, a sophisticated understanding has grown over time. The bears offer valuable services that are not available in any other way. they can identify some kinds of medicinal plants that humans have trouble finding thanks to their acute sense of smell. They can clear landslides or dig caverns that offer refuge in inclement weather thanks to their strength and digging prowess. In exchange, people share foods that bears especially like and tend to injuries that bears are unable to heal on their own. However, the relationship necessitates careful management and ongoing attention. Even when cave bears are attempting to be helpful, they are dangerous creatures, and what they consider helpful doesn't always match what humans would consider helpful. When a bear moves boulders to clear a blocked stream, it may also reroute the water in ways that humans would prefer to keep dry in flood areas. Curiosity about the newcomers to the village appears to be the driving force behind the current visit. The lead bear, a massive female known to the villagers as Shadow Walker, approaches the horse enclosure politely, but clearly shows interest. The horses, obviously uneasy but not in a panic, gaze at the bear with the kind of focus that indicates they have seen such animals before. Shadow Walker examines the horses in a methodical and comprehensive manner. She repeatedly goes around the enclosure, using her sensitive nose to test the air and occasionally making quiet huffing noises that appear to be a kind of communication. The horse's soft nickering in response indicates that whatever conversation is going on is not antagonistic. Perhaps an hour later, Shadow Walker appears content with her research. Through a complicated series of sounds and gestures, she expresses her approval of the new arrangements as she approaches the area where a number of villagers have been observing the interaction. Although it took years to develop, this type of diplomacy has a significant purpose. The bear's willingness to adapt to changes in the valley helps prevent those changes from upsetting the larger ecosystem in ways that could have an impact on everyone. The bear family leaves as silently as they came, leaving a gift that exemplifies the high level of interspecies communication in this valley as evening draws near. Shadow Walker has left a little heap of herbs and roots near the village's food storage area, which the villagers don't immediately recognize. It turns out that these rare plants, which only grow in the high mountains where bears spend most of their time, have potent healing qualities. The bear's profound comprehension of human needs and values is demonstrated by this gift. They have made the effort to bring examples from their own area because they are aware that the villagers value new medicinal plants. The bears have effectively paid in advance for any future services they might require from the humans, so it's also a kind of trade. Discussion of the day's events and conjecture about their potential implications for the future liven up the evening meal. Ideas for additional projects that could profit from human-beaver cooperation have been sparked by the successful partnership on the dam repair. Everyone has been reminded by the bear visit of the intricate web of connections that goes well beyond the borders of the village. Additionally, the injured sloth's continued recovery has increased trust in the community's capacity to assist species in adjusting to their changing environment. It may be more difficult to identify the most important development, though. It's the increasing awareness that the community's relationship with nature is entering a new stage. Their ancestors formed alliances based mostly on mutual aid and survival. Relationships founded on a sincere appreciation and respect for the distinct skills and viewpoints that every species contributes to their common ecosystem appear to be something more advanced being developed by the current generation. This evolution is far from finished and didn't happen all at once. However, its effects are evident everywhere, from the informal interactions between kids and mammoth calves to the intricate procedures that control interactions with potentially hazardous animals like cave bears. The village has evolved into a setting where communication between species is not only feasible but commonplace, and where the lines separating the animal and human communities are not rigid but rather flexible. The Western traveler finalizes her departure preparations as the week comes to an end. During her stay, she has gained a lot of knowledge, but perhaps more significantly, she has made relationships that will last beyond her time there. Now that the village has connections to a community hundreds of miles away, there are opportunities for future collaboration and assistance that neither side could have previously envisioned. It appears that the two horses she is leaving behind have settled into their new surroundings quite nicely. Within the daily rhythm of the village, they have developed their own routines and started to build bonds with both human and animal residents. The early indications are positive, but it will take time to ascertain whether these connections can grow into real partnerships. Ceremonies that combine emotional farewell with practical preparation mark her departure. The entire village comes together to wish her a safe journey, and each family gives her something to take with them, such as travel-friendly dried foods, potentially useful tools, or life-saving medications. However, the most priceless presents are intangible: information, relationships, and commitments to future collaboration. Along with her physical supplies, she brings a plethora of innovative ideas and methods that could revolutionize her people's approach to their relationships with animals and the environment, as she leads her remaining horses out of the village and follows the route that will return her home across the mountains. Her visit will have far-reaching consequences that could affect species she will never directly encounter and communities she will never see. After she leaves, the village gets back into its routines, but it's not exactly the same as it was a week ago. The dynamic of everyday life has been subtly but significantly altered by the two horses. Their presence has drawn a variety of birds, opening up new avenues for study and observation. Their grazing habits have changed the grass's growth in some places, which could influence other animals' feeding preferences. Some of the smaller mammals that inhabit the area around the village appear to be influenced by their scent as well. Although these changes aren't disruptive, they serve as a reminder that any addition to an ecosystem has repercussions that last for a very long time. The villagers have learned to be aware of these impacts and modify their own conduct accordingly. As climate change continues to change the distribution and behavior of species throughout the region, this skill might become more and more important. The mammoth calf, Little Thunder, keeps growing and changing at a rate that astounds everyone who sees him. He is only a week old, but already he is displaying the intelligence that makes his species such exceptional companions. He appears to be able to identify specific people by sight and smell, reacting to them in different ways depending on how they have interacted with him and his mother in the past. More interestingly, he has started to investigate the limits of his world with the methodical curiosity that distinguishes highly intelligent young mammals. He learns about texture, weight, and flexibility by using his trunk to test various objects. He plays a variety of sounds, ranging from quiet chirps that seem to be intended to attract attention to louder trumpets that may be an attempt to communicate over greater distances. In order to record actions and reactions that could shed light on mammoth psychology and development, Kyle spends hours every day watching and interacting with the young mammoth. In addition to being extremely helpful if other mammoths in the valley give birth, this information is unprecedented in human knowledge because it provides detailed observations of mammoth behavior in a setting where the animals feel supported and safe rather than threatened or defensive. Although challenging, the work is fascinating. New sounds, new behaviors, and fresh proof of the complexity hidden behind those tiny, dark eyes are revealed every day. In addition to his physical development, Little Thunder is also forming his own unique personality, tastes, and perspectives on the world. The villagers are happy about some of these developments. It appears that both species find amusement in the calf's ability to play games with human children, which are gentle competitions of strength and agility. He appears to be aware that his human playmates are smaller and more delicate than he is, as evidenced by his impressive self-control in these exchanges. Some behaviors are more difficult. Little Thunder has started pushing against barriers and fences to test limits. He's learned that he has advantages because of his size in some circumstances, but he doesn't always use those advantages thoughtfully. It turns out that training a mammoth involves a level of patience and ingenuity never before attempted by a human. The way Little Thunder is altering the bond between his mother and the human race, however, may be the most important part of his growth. Since giving birth, Stormwalker has grown more assertive about her needs and preferences and more protective. Instead of merely accepting the plans that others make for her, she has started to choose where she wants to graze and when she wants to engage with people. This change marks a new stage in the relationship between humans and mammoths. The relationship is changing from one that is largely focused on human control of mammoth behavior to one that is more akin to equal partner negotiation. Stormwalker's increased assertiveness is a sign of her confidence in her relationship with humans and her willingness to voice her own priorities within that relationship, not of rebellion or animosity. Humans must also adapt to the changes. In order to anticipate Stormwalker's needs before she has to call for them to be met, Kyle and the other beast speakers are learning to read her moods and preferences more accurately. They are creating new communication channels that enable more intricate exchanges and advanced forms of collaboration. Although the work is hard, it is also very fulfilling. The developing relationship is more complex and nuanced than any relationship that existed prior to Little Thunder's birth. Both parties are gaining knowledge and developing skills that neither would have had on their own. The village starts getting ready for the upcoming colder months as autumn draws near. These preparations, collecting and storing food, repairing shelters, and creating warm clothing, are comparable to those made by human communities throughout history in certain respects. In other respects, however, the preparations are specific to communities that coexist with megafauna. To survive the winter, the mammoths require far more food than the village can produce with conventional means. However, mammoths can also help with gathering in ways that are impossible for humans to do alone. Because of their size and strength, they can reach food sources that are inaccessible to humans, such as high branches, roots buried deep in frozen ground, and fruits and nuts that grow in hazardous areas that are unsafe for people to safely traverse. Species work together to prepare for winter, each contributing in accordance with their skills and receiving in accordance with their requirements. The mammoths assist the humans and the rest of the community in gathering food. In exchange, people assist in preparing and preserving food in ways that increase its shelf life during the coldest months. The giant beavers help by preserving and enhancing the water systems that guarantee a sufficient supply of water during winter droughts and avoid flooding during spring thaws. The scope of the engineering projects they complete together is far greater than what either species could handle on its own, though in some cases they need human assistance, especially when precise tools are required to direct water flow. As winter draws near, even the relationship with the cave bears changes. As they look for food to help them accumulate the fat reserves they need for hibernation, the bears start to show up more regularly. Since well-fed bears are less likely to be dangerous during the months when food becomes scarce, the villagers try to accommodate these requests. Now that it is fully recovered, the injured giant sloth decides to stay with the village instead of going back to its native area. No one who has watched the creature over the past few weeks is surprised by the choice. The sloth has developed close relationships with a number of the people who looked after it while it recovered, and it appears to value the safety and company that come with living in a village. Its existence expands the community's potential in another way. Humans have never fully catalogued the edible and medicinal plants that giant sloths know about. They have the ability to transform some vegetation types that would be poisonous to other species into forms that are safe and nourishing for a greater variety of animals. Because their digestive systems are so effective, the waste products they produce make excellent fertilizer for the village gardens. Most importantly though, the sloth offers an alternative viewpoint on patience and time. Sloths move slowly because they see the world at a different pace, not because they are indolent or ineffective. Instead of noticing changes that happen over hours or days, they notice changes that happen over weeks or months. Their presence in the village acts as an early warning system for changes in the environment that faster moving species might not notice until it is too late to make an effective adaptation. The village changes as the first snows fall. The rhythm of longer nights and shorter days causes a slight slowdown in the pace of daily life. However, for many communities, winter is not the time of dormancy. Rather, it's a time for a variety of activities, such as planning and preparation, storytelling and crafting, and strengthening the bonds that keep the community going during its most trying time. The mammoths appear to love the snow, rolling in it and tossing it at each other and any humans who dare to join in their games with their trunks. Little Thunder clearly enjoys his first snowfall, attempting to catch snowflakes with his trunk and letting out an excited trumpet when he successfully balances tiny snowballs on his head. It takes some time for the horses to get used to the snow and cold because they are from a different climate. However, they quickly adjust, developing thicker coats and learning how to sift through snow to get to the grass below. Their existence opens up new winter travel options, enabling people to stay in touch with other communities, even when walking becomes challenging. Stories abound on winter evenings, and many of the best ones involve human and animal cooperation. Because of its ability to react to specific words and phrases, the giant sloth enhances dramatic scenes in stories with sound effects. By contributing their own vocalizations, the mammoths give the stories a sort of musical accompaniment. During thrilling scenes, the horses even join in, rhythmically stamping their feet. These group storytelling sessions are an example of art forms that genuinely engage multiple species as creative participants rather than just subjects or audiences, which is unprecedented in human culture, because they incorporate viewpoints and experiences that no single species could offer. The stories that come out of these sessions are unlike anything that humans alone could produce. During these winter evenings, one story comes to light that becomes especially important to the community. It tells the tale of the Great Migration, which is said to have taken place many generations ago when the region's shifting climate compelled all of the species to move to new areas. The narrative claims that the migration was only successful because various species discovered new ways to support one another. Supplies for smaller animals were carried by mammoths. The entire migration was able to cross hazardous waters thanks to the river crossings that giant beavers created. Cave bears shielded vulnerable people from predators that could have killed them. Planning and coordination by humans helped to keep the migration headed in the right direction. The narrative might be entirely mythical, or it might serve to preserve the memory of real-life occurrences from the distant past. Its significance, however, comes from its depiction of what is possible when species cooperate to achieve shared objectives rather than from its historical accuracy. It offers a model for collaboration that goes well beyond the regular alliances that keep village life going. That template becomes more and more pertinent as winter deepens. Everyone has noticed that the climate is changing more quickly. Compared to the seasonal patterns everyone remembers, the winter is warmer than usual, with more rain and less snow. The unusual weather confuses some plants, causing them to bud weeks earlier than usual. Some animals are changing when they migrate or when they hibernate. No one species can handle these changes on its own. Early blooming plants must be shielded from potential late frosts. Coordination of the disorganized animal migration patterns is necessary to avoid territorial and resource disputes. To guarantee that animals who awaken early from their winter slumber can find enough food, the modified hibernation schedules require assistance. The village handles these difficulties by working together and adapting, just like it does with the majority of difficulties. The mammoths protect early budding plants by forming windbreaks with their size and strength. In order to support animals whose schedules have been disturbed, the humans utilize their planning skills to organize food sharing. The giant sloth offers advice on which plants require more time to develop properly and which can be safely harvested early. However, the difficulties also draw attention to the shortcomings of small-scale solutions to major issues. Although the ecosystem is much larger than the village's borders, the village can adjust to changes within its own boundaries. Coordination between communities over great distances and unprecedented resource and knowledge sharing will be necessary for successful climate change adaptation. These bigger questions become more and more prevalent in the discussions around the winter fires. How can the village-level partnership model be expanded to the regional or continental level? How can communities that live hundreds of miles apart coordinate how they react to changes in the environment? How can species with varying habitat requirements and migration patterns be assisted in adapting without causing conflicts with other species? Although there are no simple answers to these questions, they are inspiring new concepts in organization, communication, and transportation that may revolutionize how the human and animal communities deal with environmental issues. These alliances, which started out as straightforward agreements for mutual survival, are developing into something far more ambitious, a coordinated response to planetary change in which several species cooperate as equal partners. This year's early arrival of spring validates everyone's concerns about the changing climate. Weeks before it should, the snow melts, causing flooding in some places and unexpected dryness in others. Although many plants appear stressed by the unusual conditions, the early plant growth that started during the warm winter is still going strong. The way the village has responded to these difficulties shows how much their skills have changed over time. The community now anticipates challenges and plans coordinated responses rather than merely responding to issues as they occur. Beavers adapt their dams to manage atypical water flows. The mammoths assist in moving plants that are having trouble in their original locations to more hospitable areas. Humans organize these activities, keep an eye on their success, and modify their tactics as necessary. The arrival of new refugees, not just the odd injured animal seeking assistance, but whole family groups escaping areas rendered uninhabitable by climate change, may be the most noteworthy development of this unusual spring. A family of giant deer travels from the south, where their customary grazing grounds are unusable due to drought. From the north, where their settlement and animal alliances have been destroyed by unusual flooding, a small group of humans arrives. Although these newcomers put a strain on the village's resources and social structures, they also present chances to broaden the network of connections that has been so beneficial to the community. The knowledge and abilities that each group of refugees brings to the village enhance those that are already there. The village's current animals have never encountered the kinds of vegetation that the giant deer are able to comprehend. The displaced people have water resource management skills that could be useful in a time of erratic precipitation. The partnership model's advantages and disadvantages are made clear by the process of integrating newcomers into the community. Human-animal cooperation principles are effective when forming relationships with new species, but they must be modified for use with larger groups or communities that have their own established organizational patterns. The village practically doubles in size throughout the spring, bringing with it both new opportunities and challenges. Greater specialization is made possible by the larger population. Some people can devote all of their attention to caring for animals, while others focus on growing plants, creating tools, or communicating over long distances. However, a larger population also puts a strain on resources and necessitates new organizational structures to preserve the harmony that was nearly effortless for smaller groups. The alterations lead to a choice that the original village could not have considered. The enlarged community chooses to split as summer draws near, with about half of the people moving to a new settlement in a valley a few days' drive to the east. The division is motivated by the realization that the partnership model may function best when implemented at an ideal scale that maintains the interpersonal relationships that enable cooperation, not by conflict or a lack of resources. Careful management of the division process guarantees that both settlements possess sufficient knowledge of all the fundamental abilities required for interspecies cooperation. Animal families are kept together whenever possible, but some species decide to split up among the settlements, establishing enduring bonds that will facilitate communication and assistance to one another. Both settlements are prospering in their own ways as the summer solstice draws near. With new skills and knowledge acquired from the year's experiences, the original village has reverted to something close to its traditional size. The new settlement is evolving its own personality and methods for overcoming the difficulties associated with interspecies cooperation. Now, a yearling mammoth with a personality as big as his expanding body, Little Thunder, has come to represent both continuity and change. In addition to embodying the adaptability that has enabled these relationships to develop and flourish, he also symbolizes the success of the human-mammoth partnership at its most personal level. His interactions with the new horses show that even species that have never experienced human partnership can benefit from the concepts of interspecies cooperation. The sounds of both communities meld into a symphony that speaks of harmony and plenty as the long summer days transition into the fall. The nickering of horses, the splashing of enormous beavers working on their engineering projects, the quiet chatter of people making plans for the future, and the trumpeting of mammoths all blend together. The intricate web of communications between communities, species, and individuals that maintains this vast community's cohesiveness may be the most important sound, even though it is inaudible to the naked human ear. Messages are carried by species whose ranges extend across the distances between human settlements, following routes created by migratory animals. Through networks that link not only the two villages, but also dozens of communities throughout the continent, information about weather, resource availability, and environmental changes is shared. The partnership model is best exemplified by this network, which coordinates entire ecosystems for adaptation and survival rather than just individual humans and animals. It's a picture of what can happen when relationships founded on respect and a common goal take the place of barriers between species. It's worthwhile to consider what this alternate history might teach us about our own relationship with nature as we come to the end of our journey into this fictional world. In this tale, the villagers' harmony with megafauna was not attained by means of advanced technology or paranormal powers. Patience, observation, respect, and a readiness to view other species as collaborators rather than resources allowed them to succeed. Their problems, such as resource scarcity, climate change, and juggling the demands of the community and individuals, are not all that dissimilar from those we face at home. Their responses, communication, cooperation, and adaptation across large networks might provide us with ideas for how to deal with our own environmental crises. Most significantly, their tale demonstrates that there is no need for dominance or exploitation in the interaction between people and the natural world. It's possible to envision and possibly even to establish partnership-based, mutually beneficial relationships in which animal intelligence and human intelligence work together to accomplish goals that neither could on its own. As our story comes to an end, twilight descends upon both villages, bringing with it the sounds of people assembling for evening meals and animals retiring for the night. A mammoth trumpets a goodnight cry in the distance, and other creatures across the valley respond, starting a communication chain that connects communities and species in a network of connections that crosses continents. Every sunset holds the promise of another day of collaboration, adaptation, and exploration in a world where the Ice Age never truly ended and humans never fully subdued nature. Although we never quite succeeded in creating it, we might still be able to do so with perseverance, discernment, and consideration for all living things on Earth. I appreciate you traveling with me into a possible future world. Perhaps you can picture the sound of mammoth calls reverberating across valleys where people and animals coexist as partners in the great adventure of life on Earth as you fall asleep tonight, wherever you are. I would love to hear about your own dreams of what might still be possible in our world if you found this exploration of what might have been to be enjoyable. Sweet dreams.